Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome back. Nice to see all of you guys. We're going to start with our meditation. First chanting, then the meditation. Then we'll come out of that with some more chanting. And since all of you guys have meditated with me before, then we can just go right into meditation. After our meditation, that's where I'm going to share with you the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. In terms of understanding the path to enlightenment and what the Buddha taught, you would need to know this teaching inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down. So I'm going to really take my time in walking you guys through this. We're going to spend the entire morning on this, taking a mid-morning break kind of in the middle around 10:30 or 11. And then we're going to take our hour-and-a-half lunch break, or it might be a little bit shorter depending on how things go today. And then in the afternoon, I'm going to teach you the ins and outs of meditation, breathing mindfulness meditation, helping you guys to know that thoroughly. And then we'll actually do a session together as well. So if you'd like to join in the chanting, you're more than welcome to do that. And then I'll come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the breath. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะวาโพตังมหาเกวันนังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมดามังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมโมโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome. It's a really great day to learn the teachings of the Buddha. Every day is, but today I'm going to be sharing with you the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching of the Buddha. In order to make your way to this enlightened mental state, where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, you would need to know this teaching inside and out, backwards and forwards, left, right, up, down. You would need to learn it in a class like this, probably multiple times, and you're going to need to study it on your own as well in order to integrate it into your day-to-day life. You're going to ultimately need to memorize this teaching in order to make your way to enlightenment. So if this is your first time learning it with me, this can be your first time, and then just understand that you're going to need more learning, more growth. You're not going to be able to just learn it in class one time and then snap your fingers and implement it right away. Remember, it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And also remember, there's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that is about belief. You're not believing the things that I'm going to share with you about this Eightfold Path. You'd like to learn it, examine it, investigate it, reflect on it to independently verify whether it's true or false, and then you would like to practice it. That's integrating it into your day-to-day life so that you can actually experience the real results. That's where the real results are coming from, is actually practicing the teachings. So I'm going to show you how to do this learning, reflection, and practice as I walk you through this teaching. So this teaching of the Eightfold Path is that there's 8 individual factors: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. It's organized into 3 different sections: the wisdom section, the moral conduct section, and the mental discipline section. One of the ways you could think about these 8 factors is it's like 8 individual dials. If you had a speaker system and you were trying to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers, you would tweak these 8 dials trying to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. Well, your mind actually functions the same way. As you tweak these 8 individual factors in your life, your mind will start performing better and better and better. Not only will you notice that the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, but you'll notice the mind's focused, concentrated. You have clarity of mind and deep memory because you're eradicating the pollutions out of the mind that we talked about yesterday. Those 10 fetters. That's what this is working to help you to be able to do, is eliminate those out of the mind. And as you're doing that, the mind's going to start performing more optimally. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They'll be at ease because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile and resentment with animosity in your relationships any longer. You'll get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood because the causes and conditions that are producing that have been uprooted. So I'm going to walk you through each one of these, helping you to understand them. And we're going to use the words of the Buddha to be able to help you to understand this. Now, it's interesting when I say that, sometimes people probably are like, well, of course we would use the words of the Buddha. Like, what else would we use in order to learn the Eightfold Path that was taught by the Buddha? Well, by and large, the vast majority of the people in the world, they don't study with the original words of the Buddha, because the original words of the Buddha are in 45 volumes of books that are about this thick, and the average person doesn't have access to this. They don't take the time. They might not even know it's available to actually go and get access to it. So I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've only ever been to one that shares the original words of the Buddha. And if you do the math, that's less than 1%. So whenever you're learning and growing and developing on the path to enlightenment, you would like to ensure that you're studying with the original words of the Buddha. And that is what I provide you in all these books at no cost, so you guys can get access to them. But it's not common that when you go and study places that they're going to study and share with you based on the original words of the Buddha. So you're going to see that here. I'm going to share with you the original words of the Buddha, starting here with right view. Here's what the Buddha shares with right view when he talks about it in the Eightfold Path. He says, in what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view. So what he's doing here is he's pointing to a teaching that is called the Four Noble Truths. The Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. So there are certain parts of the Eightfold Path where he just points to another teaching. He's like, that's right view. Or you'll see when he talks about right livelihood, he just points to right livelihood. He says that's right livelihood because he has these teachings in other parts of his teachings. So here what I've done underneath of this line is I've put the top section of the Four Noble Truths, and unfortunately, once again, our projector must have slid down that you can't see this last line here. But essentially what this is this is helping you to be able to see the connection between the Four Noble Truths of right view, where he's pointing to the Four Noble Truths, and here you can see that connection, that he's pointing to the Four Noble Truths as part of this teaching. I'm going to fix this projector so you guys can see all the way through. Because there's other slides too that have something on the bottom, and this is such an important teaching, the Eightfold Path. You need to really see this. Okay, so here you can see the connection between the Eightfold Path of right view and the Four Noble Truths. This is just the top section of Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths goes on from this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths so that you can understand what they are. Okay, in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the three universal truths. These are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. We call them truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true. Other people know that they're true as well. But in order for you to get the benefit of it, you need to know that they're true. And that's why you're not believing any of the teachings. The Buddha teaches you to, when you're learning his teachings, to listen with eager ears. You're going to need to actively learn the teachings. You can't just sit back and, just kind of let it flow over your mind. You're going to need to actively engage with the teachings in order to be able to understand them, because you're going to need to learn them, examine them, investigate them, reflect on them to independently verify them, and practice them. So I'm going to walk you, I'm going to walk you through this in a way that you can do that. I'm going to help you to see this process, because you need to cultivate wisdom. What the Buddha is doing for you is he's helping you to understand the way the world is. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be, and that if you follow rules and commandments and everybody follows these rules and commandments, that then the world will be a better place. He's teaching you the way the world is, because the reason why the mind experiences anger, sadness, and frustration and all these other discontent feelings is because it lacks wisdom about how the world is. It's struggling to live in a world that it doesn't understand. That's the indication for you. That stress and anxiety and guilt and shame and fear and annoyance that you're having, that's showing you that your mind doesn't have certain wisdom about the world. And that's why it's struggling and having certain difficulties and challenges in the world. So he's going to help you to be able to understand the way the world is. And one of the things that he's helping you to do is understand how your mind is functioning. And when you understand how this unenlightened mind is functioning, then you can move it towards the enlightened mind through training. So this first universal truth, he's helping you to understand how the world is. What this is the universal truth of impermanence, that everything in the world is constantly changing. You need to be able to see this constant change in the world, that things arise, they change, and then they fade away. This is the universal truth of impermanence. Things are constantly changing. There's not a fixed state. And remember, this is a building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths when we get to it. That things are constantly changing. They arise, they change, and they fade away. Okay, these are called conditioned objects. Whatever arises is going to change and is going to fade away. Okay, then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they do not fade away. This is like enlightenment and the natural laws of existence. The Buddha taught the natural laws. So the natural laws that the Buddha described 2,500 years ago are the same natural laws that exist today. This is why his teachings are timeless. Whatever he taught 2,500 years ago, it's the exact same thing you need to know today in order to be able to get to enlightenment, because the natural laws haven't changed. So there's conditioned objects that arise, they change, and they fade away. This is called impermanence. And then there's unconditioned objects that do not arise, do not change, and don't fade away. Conditioned objects are anything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. These are all conditioned objects, and they are all constantly changing. They are impermanent. Okay, so this is a little bit of the intellectual understanding of the universal truth of impermanence. But you don't believe that. You need to move it into reflection, right? Because you're not believing what I say. You're not believing what's up here. You need to be able to reflect on this to independently verify whether it's true or it's false. Because if what I'm saying is that it's a universal truth, that everything you see, hear, smell, taste, touches your body and comes through your mind is impermanent, you should be able to look around the world and independently verify that. You don't need to believe what I'm saying. In fact, don't believe what I'm saying. You need to see the truth for yourself. And what you do is you look around the world and you try to find something that is permanent. Because if you can find something that you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or goes through the mind that is permanent, then you've disproven this, and this isn't a universal truth. So I suggest you start with something that you're familiar with. You start with something like this physical body. You're familiar with this body. You can ask yourself, is it permanent, meaning that it never changes, or is it impermanent, meaning it's constantly changing? What would you say? Is this body permanent or is it impermanent? Gentleman says impermanent. What would you say? It's impermanent, right? We get taller, we get shorter, we get pimples, moles, wrinkles, we get gray hair, we lose our hair, our teeth grow in, then they fall out, and then new teeth grow in, right? Our nails are constantly growing, and we cut them and they grow some more. Our hair is the same way. There's constant change with this physical body. In fact, ever since the egg and the sperm came together, this body's been constantly changing. Right? So we could say this body is surely impermanent, right? What about your relationships? If your relationships are permanent, you've had exactly the same people in your life your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, you've had people coming and going in and out of your life your entire life. So what would you say? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? People have been constantly coming and going in and out of your life. What about your bank account? It's impermanent? Yeah. So bank accounts going up and down and up and down, right? Some people's goes up, up, up. Some people's goes down, down, down. You know what category you're in, right? So your bank account is constantly changing, right? What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? Constantly changing, right? It's impermanent. So we could go on and on and on like this. And if that's what you need to do, do it. You need to be able to independently verify what I'm sharing with you is that everything around the world is impermanent, because this is going to be a major building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. When you're walking down the street and you're on the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that is impermanence. When you're walking down the sidewalk here in Thailand, the sidewalks go up and down as you're walking, right? That's impermanence. Some streets have sidewalks, some streets don't. That's impermanence. You can look around the temple. You can see the wood planks on the floor. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. Some of them are one color, some of them are different color, different texture, right? Look at the people in the class. We have different people in the class today than we had yesterday, right? This is impermanence. Constant change all throughout. You're looking at a fence, you see the paint fading on the fence. This is impermanence. So you're going to need to walk around the world and deeply soak into your mind that everything you're experiencing and everything around you is impermanent. Okay, so this is a building block to help you understand the Four Noble Truths when we get to it. Then there's the second universal truth. It's called discontentedness. Some people refer to this as suffering. If you've heard or you've studied the teachings of the Buddha somewhere else, they might have used the word suffering here. I don't use that word because it doesn't accurately represent what the Buddha was teaching, but I'll explain to you guys what this universal truth is and what the Buddha taught, and then I'll circle back and explain to you why I don't use the word suffering. So the original word in the original text, the Pali language, is dukkha. This word dukkha translates to discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. What the Buddha is teaching you is how the unenlightened mind is unstable, unsteady, and it's shaken up. It has three feelings: a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. The pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. These are very pleasant for you to experience. But the mind is unsteady and unstable and shaken up when it's experiencing that. If you've ever been so excited you like tripped and fell, that's because your mind was unstable and shaken up. Then there's painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are very painful to experience. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant. And I put loneliness and boredom here, but some people say that's very painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category if you like. Or shyness. That's a really good example of neither painful nor pleasant, right? It's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Or say you were on public transportation and somebody came in that you didn't know and they sat really close to you and your body was touching their body. You might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Your mind's uncomfortable, it's dissatisfied in that situation, right? So these are the three feelings that the unenlightened mind's experiencing: pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. And these are called conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, you will experience these feelings. So for example, if it's sunny outside, you might be so happy, you might be excited. Based on the condition that there's the sun, you are now happy. But the problem with that is when you base your feelings on an impermanent condition, that means your feeling is impermanent too. Your happiness is impermanent, because as soon as it starts raining, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness. If you get so excited when your bank account balance is up here, then that means when it goes down here, you'll be sad and frustrated, right? So if you allow your mind to base its inner feelings on some condition, then it will end up in the painful feelings at some point, because that condition is not permanent. You will see what I mean when we get to the Four Noble Truths. So what this particular universal truth is explaining is that the unenlightened mind is going to be going up and down and up and down and up and down. Sure, you experience peace here and there, but it's only a matter of time before you get annoyed or frustrated or agitated or some other discontent feeling. This is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. So an unenlightened being will wake up in the morning, they'll see it's sunny outside, they'll get so happy and excited. Yay, it's sunny. I want to go hiking today. I've been meaning to go on this hiking trail for so long, and it's finally sunny. I'm going to go hiking. I'm going to call my friends. We're going to have a blast. We're going to have a great time. So now you go take a shower, and you come out of the shower, and it's raining, and now you're frustrated. You're agitated. You're annoyed. Man, I can't go hiking. Right? Because the mind's going up and down based on these conditions. Well, an enlightened being is beyond all of this. An enlightened being, when they wake up in the morning, they're already happy. Right? They see it's sunny outside. Sweet. Let's go hiking, man. I've been interested in going on this trail for a long time. I'm going to call my friends. We're going to have a great time. It's going to be wonderful. And now you go take a shower and you come out and it's raining. And then a enlightened being will be like, all right, well, it's raining. I guess I'm not going hiking. So maybe I'll stay home and read a book. Maybe I'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll invite my friends over and we'll have some dinner. I'll cook some food. No big deal. Right? You didn't base your happiness on the sun. So when the sun is gone, you're still happy. You can maintain your joy. So your mind in the enlightened mental state is beyond these conditioned feelings. But in the unenlightened state, the mind is still experiencing these conditioned feelings. You need to be able to see the pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. But we're talking about conditioned pleasant feelings, right? What a conditioned pleasant feeling is that if this condition is met, and 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 this condition is met, then I will be happy. Right? If the weather is this, if my mom and dad does this, if my boss does this, if my life partner does this, if my children do this, and my bank account is this, then I will be happy. So your happiness shrinks. Your ability to be happy becomes less and less and less because you have so many conditions in your mind of what you need in order to be happy, right? That's not what you're interested in. You would like to get beyond that, where your mind can experience unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy, where it can just always be happy without any condition being met. So where I talk about these conditioned pleasant feelings as being part of the problem, that if you allow your mind to get a conditioned pleasant feeling, it's only a matter of time before the painful one comes along. So for example, if you get so excited that you got a brand new job, oh my goodness, this is an amazing company, great co-workers, excellent salary, beautiful office, amazing title, and now you go in and you're so excited about this job, right? Well, 5 years later, when the company goes out of business or they lay you off or you get fired, you're going to be angry. You're going to be sad and frustrated. Because if you allow your mind to get happy based on the condition of having this job, that job is impermanent. So when you don't have that anymore, you will be sad or frustrated or agitated. So you need to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem. So by the time you eliminate this, where your mind's forming feelings based on conditions, your mind will be beyond this, where you can just always be happy. There doesn't need to be any condition met. If it's sunny outside, you're already happy before it was sunny. If it's raining outside, you're already happy. If you're employed at a certain job, you were already happy before that. And then when you're no longer working at this job, you can still be happy that you're not basing your happiness on these things, right? So this is called discontentedness, where the mind is experiencing these conditioned feelings. And you'll see what this is, the problem that the mind is experiencing, and how we can transform this. We can transform it to where the mind is experiencing unconditioned mental qualities, where your mind is always bright and joyful and cheerful and uplifted. But as long as the mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition, and it's experiencing these conditioned feelings, your mind can't be bright and cheerful and glad and uplifted all the time, because it's only a matter of time before these conditions aren't being met and the mind ends up in the painful feelings, right? So some people refer to this as suffering. You might hear that, okay? I don't use the word suffering because, in my opinion, the word suffering really describes these painful feelings really well. When you're sad or angry or frustrated, you could say you are suffering. But if your boss walked into your office and gave you a $20,000 raise and you got so happy and excited about that raise, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Right? Or that person who came and sits next to you in public transportation and your body's touching their body, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not. right? So the suffering, that word describes the painful feelings really well, but it doesn't describe the pleasant feelings and the painful or neither painful nor pleasant feelings. And if you're only using the word suffering, that means you're only understanding 33% of what the Buddha is teaching you here. You're missing 66% of his teachings. And if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings, how could you ever get to the goal, right? So this word discontent, discontented, and discontentedness explains much better the full range and spectrum of emotions and feelings that an unenlightened being is experiencing. And that brings your mind to the full understanding of what the entire problem is that the Buddha discovered in the mind is these discontent feelings. Okay, so now you don't believe what I'm sharing with you here. That was a bit of the intellectual learning, right? Now you move it into reflection. You know your mind's unenlightened. Does this explain what you're experiencing? Because what the Buddha is doing here is he's explaining the unenlightened mind. Do you experience conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant? Is there any feeling or emotion that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories? Because if there is, we can talk about it when we get to the question period. You can ask me questions and I can help you, right? Because then we can talk about this. But you need to be able to independently verify whether this is true or false through your own direct experience. And where you're having trouble doing that, you can reach out to me and I will help you. Okay? So now we'll move on to this universal truth of non-self. This universal truth of non-self is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. He discovered those 10 individual pollutions that we talked about yesterday, the 10 fetters. Remember, he calls them fetters because during his lifetime, if you were a prisoner, they would attach a shackle and a chain and a ball around your ankle, and they would keep you confined in a certain area, like a field, where today we put prisoners in jail cells and prison cells. But it's these 10 fetters that the Buddha describes, these 10 pollutions that are keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state. And the goal of this path is to purify the mind of those 10 fetters, and that's where the peace and the joy is coming into the mind, right? So the very first fetter is called personal existence view. This is a pollution of mind or a taint or a defilement. The personal existence view is helping you to be able to understand that what the mind does in the unenlightened state when it has personal existence view is it has a certain amount of misunderstanding, confusion. It lacks understanding that it clings to this body and it clings to this mind, thinking that this is who you are as a person. It'll cling to your self-image or your self-identity, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And now, if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived, you will get pleasant feelings. But if you're not being perceived the way you want to be perceived, you will get painful feelings, right? So I'll give you some examples here. If you've ever been out in a social situation and you spilled something on your clothing and you were embarrassed, this is your personal existence view. Your mind's clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And as long as you're being perceived that way with clean clothes, now you're happy. But when you're not being perceived that way, you've got some ice cream or pizza sauce on your clothing, you're frustrated or annoyed or embarrassed or some other discontent feeling. If you've ever looked in the mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a mole or a pimple or gray hair, you started losing your hair and you were shaken up by that, that is your personal existence view, because your mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way, and it's not going to be perceived that way, and now you're shaken up by that. If you've ever looked in the mirror, or if you've ever been standing in in front of your closet thinking about who you're going to see today, and you're thinking about, how do I want to look today? What shirt do I want to wear? What pants do I want to wear? There are certain people you're going to see today, and you want to appear a certain way to those people, and you're standing in front of your closet trying to figure out what clothes to wear so you can be perceived a certain way. This is the personal existence view. And I often share with people about how when I was a teenager, I used to get out the gel and the mousse and run it through my hair, try to get every little hair in exactly the right spot before I go outside to school, right? And sometimes I did this so long, I would actually miss the school bus on the way to school. This is personal existence view, right? The mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way in terms of your self-image. You're clinging to this self-image, wanting others to be perceiving you that way. And when you have agreeable situations, you feel happy. But when you're experiencing disagreeable things related to this self-image, then you're discontent with painful feelings. But then there's a self-identity in the mind. This is where you might think like, I am an American, or I am Chinese, or I am Spanish, or I am Israeli, or I am Brazilian, or I am Polish, or I am a Brit, I am Canadian. Any of this I am around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your job or occupation, your nationality, any of these things, the mind can cling to an I am this. And now your mind clinging to that self-identity, if you experience agreeable things, you feel happy. But if you experience disagreeable things, you'll experience the painful feelings. So if you've ever been in a relationship and you identified with I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife, when you guys were together, your identity was intact. But then when you guys broke up, you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. Because when you were single, your mind didn't identify that way. So therefore, you thought the way to solve that is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship again. But this isn't going to solve the problem, because the problem is the discontentedness that's occurring due to the personal existence view, the pollution in the mind. Or let's just say that you were ever at a restaurant, and let's just say 2 tables over, they're talking very fondly about your nationality. They're saying all Americans are lovely and kind and warm and gentle, right? And you hear this, right? And maybe you get all these pleasant feelings. But then maybe 2 tables over, you hear disagreeable things. Maybe people are talking degrading in negative ways about the nationality that your mind is holding on to. And now you feel angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. This is because of personal existence view, the identity that the mind is clinging to. Or say you have a certain job or occupation, like maybe a police officer or something like this, and you're doing that job for 10, 15, 20 years and you feel great. But then maybe you get injured, maybe you retire, maybe you get fired, and you're not doing that job anymore. And now you're a taxi driver, but your mind is clinging to this identity of I am a police officer. And now when you're driving that taxi, you're so frustrated and irritated because your mind identifies with I am a police officer. And here you are driving this taxi, right? So as long as you cling to a self-identity, your mind is going to have discontentedness. You might feel like you're lost or confused, or you might feel unwhole, right? This person who identifies with I'm a police officer, who is now a taxi driver, they might feel like less of a person because they've identified with I am a police officer for so long, right? So the Buddha teaches you that there is no self, that this body is not you, this mind is not you, it's not who you are as a person. But the challenge is that with personal existence view and this confusion in the mind will cling to a self, thinking that this is who you are, that it will cling to this self-image, it'll cling to this self-identity, and now you'll be discontent with either pleasant feelings or painful feelings related to this. In fact, some people get this so bad sometimes that they come to places like Thailand, because they feel like they don't know who they are anymore. They feel like they've lost themselves. They don't know who they are. They don't know their true self. In fact, they might talk to their family and relatives and say, I'm going to go to Thailand and find myself. I need to go find my true self. Well, they're not going to find themselves here in Thailand because it doesn't exist. They might come here and find new friends, new hobbies, new activities, a new job, or something like that. And they go back to their home country and they're like, yay, I found myself again. Yay, I know who I am, right? But 5 years later, when all that stuff changes, they're right back in the same problem because their mind was clinging to these things as who they were. And now when all these things change because they're impermanent, the person doesn't know who they are anymore, right? So this is the challenge when the mind has personal existence view, is that it can't be permanently peaceful because you can't be perceived a certain way by people all the time. It's just not possible. So this is a little bit on personal existence view and the universal truth of non-self. Sometimes people understand this when I first start talking about it. Sometimes they don't. And if that's the category you're in, no worries, because there's plenty of opportunity for you to learn more about the universal truth of non-self in other classes and other programs that I teach. But this is a little bit of an introduction to it, the intellectual part of it. But now, don't believe it. You need to take it into reflection to be able to independently verify what I'm sharing with you. Is what I'm saying is there is no self, right? And you need to be able to see this truth for yourself. So here's the way you do that. Think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and now. Think about your personality and your character, who you think you are as a person. Has it been exactly the same through all those 4 phases of your life, or has it been constantly changing? What would you say? It's constantly changing, right? So you can see with that there is no permanent self. Okay, here's another one. Let's just say your arm is amputated and you only have one hand and one arm. Are you less of a person because you only have one hand and one arm? What would you say? No, you're not less of a person. Okay, so there you can see intellectually, you understand that this body is not you, right? Because if this body is you, you would answer that question of saying, yes, I am less of a person because I have less body, so therefore I am less of a person. But intellectually, you understand that this body is not you. But in the heat of the moment, when somebody says something in a degrading or disparaging way about this body, that's where the confusion kicks in. That's where the misunderstanding kicks in. And now the anger and frustration and all those other things come in. And the mind becomes agitated or frustrated, right? Here's another way. Point to yourself. Where are you? Sometimes people point here. Sometimes people point here. I am here. Well, if that's what you're doing or that's what you're thinking about doing, you need to be able to look at what you're pointing to. If you're pointing here, you're saying, I am here. What you're pointing to is a shirt. And you ask yourself, is that who you are? That shirt that you're wearing, that clothing on the body, is that you? Like if we took that shirt off and we held it up, is that you? Is that who you are? That's not you, right? Okay, so we throw that away. Where are you? Right? Someone might point again. Well, you're pointing to skin. Is that who you are? That skin that you've got? If we took that skin off and held it up and pointed to it, is that who you are? That's not you either, right? Okay, so throw that away. Where are you? And someone might point again. Now you've got bones and muscle tissue and organs and fluid. None of those bits and pieces and parts are you, but your mind is clinging to that, thinking that that is who you are. And now the mind struggles in situations where someone comments about this body. If they say something very fond about this body, like maybe they say, wow, that shirt brings out the color of your eyes. You look so handsome. You look so beautiful. Wow, they're talking about me. You get all these pleasant feelings, right? But then it's only a matter of time due to impermanence as somebody says something degrading and disparaging about this body. And now you're frustrated and agitated and annoyed. So you need to get to the point where you understand that this body is not you. There is a body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence, but that isn't you. It's not who you are, right? So that's what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see. So now you can disassociate with these things as being who you are. Sometimes people even cling to their decisions as who they are. Like say in the past, you used to use drugs and alcohol. You might think in your mind, I am an alcoholic or I am an addict. And people usually teach you these things so that you'll never go back to it ever again. So that's wise to never go back to these things ever again. But once your mind adopts this identity of I am an addict or I am an alcoholic, now you can have guilt or shame in your mind because of these things, right? Where you don't need to identify that way. You can understand that, sure, there was decisions that you made in the past to use those substances, but that doesn't define who you are today as a person, right? So any of your choices and decisions that you've made, that doesn't define who you are, right? So you need to get to the point where you realize non-self, where you realize that this body was born on a certain land, for example, but your mind doesn't have to adopt the identity of that's who you are as a person. Right? So even if you were born in a place like Israel or Poland or America or Brazil or wherever it was, that land is just dirt. It's just earth. But the mind has adopted this identity of I am this. And now we have sports teams, we have flags, we have national anthems that we cheer and cheer and cheer. And now your mind might be adopting that identity of who you think you are as a person, where in reality, you need to let that go and realize that this body was born on that land, but that doesn't define who you are as a person. Okay, so this is a bit about the universal truth of non-self. So I'm going to stop here and see what questions you guys have here at the temple. If you guys could use the microphones, that'd be great. Those of you online, if you could put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or if you're in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like. So let me know what questions you guys have. So I see a couple of people got mics, so I'm not sure who's first, who's second, so I'll let you guys decide.
I think that I have a question about when you're going through the day and you recognize that you're indulging in your personal existence view of yourself in that moment. Is there something that you should either substitute it for? Is there something, how do you remind yourself constantly that you are operating from that? Because I think that's going to be the hardest fetter of all.
Sure. So what you're going to learn in the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path is that you use your mindfulness to be aware that that is arising. And when you're aware that it's arising, in the moment, you cut it off and let it go. This is called right mindfulness and right effort, right? So you'll learn that in the Eightfold Path. But then what you would like to do is there's proactive things that you can do to eliminate personal existence view. So there's things that you can do in the moment when it's arising, which is what the Eightfold Path is going to teach you. But then you would really like to hit it with these proactive methods of eradicating personal existence view so that it doesn't even arise. It will arise on your way to enlightenment, but if you can be hitting it with these proactive things, it'll knock it down more and more and more till eventually it won't be there at all. So in chapter 16 of this book, the first book, that's where I talk about all those proactive methods. And I teach this in various classes. In this particular class, I introduce you to what this is, and then we focus on it when we get to other programs. But you'll learn in the Eightfold Path what you can do in the moment, and then ultimately you'll need to learn how to proactively work to eliminate it. Other questions?
Yeah. We are not a body, we are not a mind, but are we conscious?
Are we conscious, or are we a consciousness? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. So what the mind's going to do when it starts to understand the universal truth of non-self, that this body is not you, this mind is not you, is it's going to be looking for something to grab onto. If I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, then what am I? Right? That's usually what people ask, and kind of similar to what you're asking. The consciousness is the same thing as the mind. This is just interchangeable. We can use those words interchangeably. The mind and the consciousness, exactly the same thing. The mind is like a cardboard box, right? And then there's contents inside of that cardboard box. In our consciousness, we're aware of what's going on in that cardboard box. So that's not you, because that mind is impermanent. But the mind's going to keep trying to grab onto something, right? Like, I am an entrepreneur, I am a business owner, I am this, I am that, I'm a grandmother, I'm a mom, I'm a this, I'm a that. So you need to get to the point where you realize these are roles that you fulfill in the world, but it doesn't define who you are as a person. So then when your kids grow up and they move out of the house and they're off on their own and they're not calling mom anymore, you can just feel completely fine because you're not identifying as who you are through this role that you fulfilled for 20, 25 years. And of course, you're still performing a certain role as being a mom, but that becomes less and less and less as they age, right? That's the sign of a parent that's done a really good job, is that their kids don't need them as much as they age. So if we cling to any of this stuff, then when it starts changing, that's where the discontentedness comes in.
Yeah, but I mean, so we are just beings searching for enlightenment.
You shouldn't even think about it like that. There's essentially a body and there's a mind, and it's come together for this existence. And the Buddha refers to that as a person. The combination of the body and the mind is a person. But even if everybody says all people are blah, 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 if you identify with I am a person, now they're talking about me, and now you're frustrated and angry. So you just get to a point, essentially what we've got here is we've got two physical bodies, right? There's a mind here, there's a mind there, and this mind is using this body to form a couple of sounds. And now these sounds are traveling over there to that body, and that body is hearing it through the ear, and now the mind is interpreting these words in a certain way. So it's basically two consciousness that are talking to each other and using the body as a conduit to be able to facilitate that, right? And that's really all it is, but we're not interested in clinging to any of those things as who you are as a person. Because that's where the liberation and the freedom of mind is. As soon as you cling to any of this stuff, that's where the discontentedness is going to happen. Mm-hmm. Have some more questions?
Thank you, teacher. Question. It just doesn't quite know what it is, but it will come if you got me some guide.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about non-self and dukkha, or discontentedness, and not identifying with that, and it seems to me that there has to be a lot of vigilance around that. As to that, I was talking to some people, and this conversation left me quite anxious. The topic was health insurance. You know, other old men, you know, we live.
It's just going in and out because it's impermanent. The Buddhist teachings even apply to modern technology.
Conversation was one of.
We do have other mics though that will probably work better, since you got a story there. Yeah, we can take that one offline. It probably just needs a battery change.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
I was thinking how much that kind of a conversation could evoke anxiety in me, born out of a shift in how I feel about myself. Maybe there's something that was my anxiety about trying to preserve this thing that's eroding and dying anyway. And my efforts could be better spent perhaps in contemplating that. And would a decision to go out and seek out, health insurance to preserve this be born out of fear and a lack of wisdom? And, I got into a bit of a fix about it, and I think I've related to you before at the conversation I had with a dentist once. He said, oh, you need root canal and a crown and it's going to look great. I said, I'm not that bothered. Can you just pull it out? And he said, no, I'm not pulling your tooth out. He says, it'll look better. And he was trying to persuade me all these reasons why I should keep this tooth at the back of my mouth. And I just kind of wonder, there is a question here, it's coming in a minute, I just don't know what it is. It's, the efforts to preserve something like that, and it takes me back into identifying, that's what I'm trying to say, it takes me back into identifying with this and my actions to preserve something, when I could do a lot of work in not identifying with that and just seeing it as an objective thing. So could you offer me some guidance as to where acknowledging non-self, that wisdom can become foolishness in not looking after myself?
Yeah, so it's a matter of understanding that this body is not you, and not clinging to it as who you are as a person, and now forming feelings based on it, while at the same time understanding that it's wise to make decisions to maintain the health of this body, because this mind is inhabiting this body, and now this body, if it's unwell, if it's unhealthy, now there's more challenges that you're going to need to deal with. This being's going to need to deal with. So it's a matter of understanding that this isn't you. It doesn't define who you are. Don't cling to it. But at the same time, you can make wise decisions to maintain the health of this body in terms of what you eat, in terms of your exercise, in terms of the quality of air that you're breathing, for example, different things like this. We can pay attention to those things and make wise decisions regarding them without clinging to the body as who we are as a person. That's what the Buddha is teaching you to be able to do. So he does talk about how, he calls these the 5 aggregates, that there's these 5 aggregates, and he talks about, or 5 criteria, and he talks about how it's a real burden to carry around this body. And he talks about how we've been doing that for so many lives. And he's teaching you to lay down the burden of having to constantly attend to this body by training your mind and getting to enlightenment so that you don't have to keep coming back into the world over and over and over again. But he also teaches that while you're in this life, that it's wise to take care of this body, that it's wise to make wise decisions to maintain its health, because your mind is connected to this body is for the rest of this life, and you would like to be able to take care of this body. So it's a matter of making sure you don't identify with it as who you are while taking care of it. So I'll give you an example. So say you get a little bit extra fat here or there. You don't have to form your feelings and emotions based on that, right? And I'm such a fat person, I'm so miserable, and I don't look the way I want to look, and all this kind of stuff. You don't need to walk around like that. But instead, it would be wise to do a little bit of exercise, watch your food intake, and ensure that you can cut down on that extra fat that the body has. So you can do that based on wise decision making, not out of fear and not out of clinging to a personal image of how you're perceived by other people. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Do we have different characteristics that make us perform different roles?
Perform different?
The roles we perform.
Oh, okay. Those are choices that we make, the roles that we perform in life, right? It's always about our own personal choice. But the challenge is that the mind can cling to that as who you are as a person. So at one time I used to be a business owner, and my mind was clinging to this idea that I was a business owner and I'm an entrepreneur. And when I started to move into sharing the teachings of the Buddha and I was headed in this direction, the mind had a lot of problems with that, because I was letting go of this thing that I had been so good at, and it brought me a certain amount of pleasure, conditioned pleasant feelings, because there was a lot of money around to be able to do whatever it is I would like to do whenever I would like to do it. So letting that go was a certain challenge for me, to be able to let that go. So even though I performed that role, my mind at one time identified with that as who I am. But when you let that go, that's where you can get to the peace and the joy, where you can so for me, I switched to a different role, but someone could maintain that role. They could still be a business owner, but just not identify with that as who they are. So getting rid of personal existence view doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to change your role. It just means that you don't identify with that as who you are. So I realized, I perform the role of being a father to my son, but the mind, while I introduce him as my son, I understand he's not mine. He doesn't belong to me. In this role that I fulfill as I am a father, the mind doesn't identify that way. So that way, when I die, as I'm getting closer and closer to death, my mind can be completely comfortable with, I'm no longer a father. I'm not performing that role anymore. This being is going to die, and he's going to be on his own at some point as an adult, and he's going to need to have enough wisdom at that point to lead his own life. So if you cling to this role of I am a father, now if your child's struggling, you might feel like less of a person, like, oh my goodness, I'm not being a very good father here. I'm not doing what I need to do. He doesn't have all the latest devices. He doesn't have all the shoes and all the clothing. Oh my goodness, I'm failing as a father. I should be better at what I'm doing. This is where the mind deteriorates when you cling to that role, rather than just understanding you can perform that role without clinging to it. Just like you can understand that this body is not you, but you can still make decisions to maintain its health.
Yeah. Then I understand we would, in essence, all be the same, but the difference is the choices we make.
Yes, we all make different choices about what we would like to do in the world. And that's what makes it unique, and that's what makes the world so wonderful and beautiful, is that we get to choose what type of life that we would like to live, right? Like you coming to Thailand, that was a choice that you made, right? You could have went anywhere in the world, or you could have stayed in your home country, but you chose to come to Thailand. And now you're having a completely different experience than you would have otherwise. And that's a personal choice that you're making.
Okay. And last question. Do we come to this life to perform a specific role, or?
No, there's no like predestiny, or there's no fate or destiny that you're fulfilling or anything like that. It's just that there is a being that came into this world, and now your life is a collection of all the decisions that you're making throughout this life. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on. I don't see any of the questions online or anything like that. So I'm going to move on to one more thing, and then I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths. This is another building block to understand the Four Noble Truths. There's something called craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectation. Holding, grasping, clinging. This is the mind's longing and yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, wanting things to be a certain way. It's almost like the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases it and chases it and chases it and chases it. It's trying to get satisfaction externally. So if you've ever been in the mall and you were walking through the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes or something like that, like a new phone, maybe a new video game, a purse, a handbag, a jewelry, a clothing, some tool or device, and you were like, oh my goodness, I just gotta have that. Oh, I want that so bad. And your mind's like longing, yearning for it. That's the craving, desire, attachment, where the mind's like, I know what I need to feel better. I need a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend. Let me get one of those. And the mind chases that for a while. And it's like, oh, that didn't work out. Let me chase some more money. That's what'll do it. Let me get some more money. And now the mind chases that for a while. Oh, I know what I need. A bigger house. That'll fix everything. Let me chase that for a while. Oh, a new car. That'll fix everything. Let me get a new car. And the mind will chase that. Oh, I know what I need. Let's go to Thailand. Thailand will fix everything. Let me just go to Thailand. That'll fix everything, right? So the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. It's pulling in the direction of the objects of its affection. So do you guys know what I'm talking about? Have you experienced this in your mind, where your mind's pulling towards something? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so now you have what you need to understand the Four Noble Truths. This is where you can have a real breakthrough. You can understand the problem in your mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is where you can finally understand once and for all what is causing the anger, sadness, frustration, all these other feelings. Because until you know the Four Noble Truths, you're walking around with a lack of wisdom, misunderstanding, and confusion. And this is why you haven't been able to solve this yet. This is why you still experience these discontent feelings. So here I'm going to walk you through in a way that you can independently verify and see for yourself, and you can have a breakthrough so that now once and for all you can understand. Okay, so the first noble truth is explaining the problem, that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. Those discontent feelings, the conditioned feelings, that's the problem that the unenlightened mind is experiencing. That it gets happy and excited, then it gets sad and angry and frustrated, then it gets lonely and bored and shy. The mind's going up and down and up and down. These are conditioned feelings that based on some condition, the mind is then going to experience a certain feeling. That's the problem that is in the unenlightened mind, that it is experiencing conditioned feeling. It's forming feelings based on some condition. The cause of that problem is described in the second noble truth. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. I'm going to say that a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples. The discontentedness, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, is caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of its affection. The mind, if it gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants and what it expects, it experiences painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. And then there's the neither painful nor pleasant feelings as well. And all of this is being caused by its cravings, desires, attachments, the craving for permanence, wanting things to be a certain way permanently. Okay, so now let me give you some examples. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you were with when you guys first got together. Okay, when you guys first got together, this person was showing you affection. They were calling you. They were checking in on you. Maybe they were inviting you out to the movies, to dinner. Maybe you were having great walks in the park, amazing conversations. Maybe you were even having intimate contact. Wow, felt so great. You were so excited during that time. There was so much pleasure that was happening, right? But then over time, you had certain expectations, things you wanted this person to do. And they had certain expectations of things they wanted you to do. And you couldn't fulfill their expectations permanently. And they couldn't fulfill your expectations permanently. And that's where you guys broke up and you ended the relationship. And now you might have been angry and frustrated. You might have been lonely and bored. You might have been missing this person. It wasn't your love that was causing that. It was the mind's craving for permanence, wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality it is impermanent. That you couldn't have been together permanently. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, one of you would have died before the other, more likely than not. And as long as your mind's holding on and craving permanence, when they're no longer in your life, you're going to experience those painful feelings because the mind's not getting what it wants. At the beginning of the relationship, you were getting what you wanted because your expectations were pretty much non-existent. At the beginning of the relationship, you were just interested to get to know this person. But as time went on, your expectations grew of what you wanted from this person, and they couldn't fulfill those expectations. And that's why you were getting angry and frustrated and agitated during the relationship. You can see this if you've had someone close to you die, like maybe grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, brothers, sisters, people like this. Maybe you had sorrow and grief and pain when they died. It wasn't your love, the care, the concern. That's a genuine interest in seeing this being be well. That doesn't cause grief and sadness and sorrow. What was causing the grief and sadness and sorrow is the mind was holding on and craving permanence, wanting grandma and grandpa to be permanent, when in reality they are impermanent. Because they were born, they had to die. There was no way around that. Just like all of us. We all have arisen. We are all changing, and we're going to fade away. We are all impermanent. But if our mind holds on and craves grandma and grandpa to be permanent, well, when they're alive, we're happy. But when they're dead, the mind is sorrow and having grief because it doesn't have the wisdom of the universal truth of impermanence. It doesn't understand that everything around you is constantly changing, right? You can see this at weddings. If you've ever been to a wedding and somebody that is getting married, like a brother or sister or friend, you can see mom and dad, you can see brothers and sisters crying and grieving at the wedding. Because this wedding ceremony is a symbol of this person going off into the world with somebody else. And if their mind is holding on, wanting this person to be permanent in your life, well, now when they're going off into the world with someone else, someone can grieve and feel very sad. It's not the love, right? Because love is a genuine interest in seeing this being be well. Hey, they're going off into the world with someone else. That's outstanding. They've got this wonderful relationship. Let's be joyful. But no, there's going to be people that are crying at that wedding because they're holding on, craving permanence. That's what's causing the painful feelings, not the love. You can see this if you've been dropped off at university or college, or maybe if you can think back to when you got dropped off at school the very first time, or if you've had kids that you've dropped off at the school. You remember when you dropped them off at school, they might have been crying, or you were crying or sad, because the mind's holding on and wanting them to be permanent when in reality they are impermanent. right? So it's the craving for permanence that is causing the mind these feelings. And if you get what you want, you get happy or excited. But if you don't get what you want, you get those painful feelings. You can see it here too. Like, let's just say you bought a brand new car, right? And you were so happy with this brand new car, and you drive this brand new car off the parking lot. And now you park it at a store, and you go inside, and you come outside, and there's a scratch on your car. Maybe you come outside and you're so frustrated. You're so angry. You've been saving for this car for 10 years. It's like the perfect car. You've always wanted this car. You were longing, yearning for it. And you finally got it. And now you go into the store and you come out and there's a scratch on your car. Well, if you're angry and frustrated there, it's not the scratch that's causing that. And it's not the person who scratched your car. It's the mind craving permanence, wanting this car to look a certain way permanently, when in reality, this car is impermanent. The paint's going to fade, the tires are going to need to be changed, the upholstery is going to get ripped and torn. But if your mind's craving permanence, when you're experiencing impermanence related to this car, you'll be angry or frustrated or sad. Right? You can think back to when we were children. It was like, Mommy, Daddy, I want chocolate and ice cream. I want chocolate and ice cream. Sure, here you go, David. Here's some chocolate and ice cream. Thank you. You're such a good mommy and daddy. I love you so much. Thank you for giving me chocolate and ice cream. And then the next day, Mommy and Daddy, I want chocolate. Here you go. Have some chocolate and ice cream. Oh, I'm so happy I got my chocolate and ice cream. Well, now, maybe on the third day, Mommy and Daddy, I want chocolate and ice cream. No, you can't have chocolate and ice cream. You're the meanest mommy and daddy ever. You're the worst mommy and daddy ever. Well, it wasn't mom and dad that caused that anger. That was the mind's craving for permanence. The mind thought that this chocolate and ice cream was permanent, when in reality, some days you're going to get chocolate and ice cream, and some days you're not. Right? But the mind craving that chocolate and ice cream, it can only be happy when you get the chocolate and ice cream. When you're not getting chocolate and ice cream, the mind's not happy. Right? So it's the craving for permanence, wanting things to be a certain way permanently, that is causing the mind this discontentedness up and down and up and down. If the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. If it doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings. And then there's the neither painful nor pleasant. So this is a little bit of the learning on the second noble truth. But remember, you're not believing any of these teachings. You need to be able to independently verify what I'm saying is true. So take a recent situation in your own life where my son just walked in, sorry. We'll talk about that another time. He experienced something today that was very good for him. I suggested to you to take some water, but you didn't. That's your karma. Well, water would have helped. Better yet, if you would have paid your phone bill, you could have taken a taxi over here, but he didn't pay his phone bill, and Dad wasn't going to pay it for him. What's that? Exactly. That's why I suggested that you do it. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. So you need to take a situation in your life, right? You need to take a situation where you've maybe recently been angry or frustrated or sad or some other discontent feeling, okay? Maybe it was today, this morning, maybe it was yesterday, maybe it was last week. Ask yourself and look at that situation. What was it that you were craving? What was it that you were longing, yearning for? Because there was something in your mind that you were longing, yearning for. And if you would have just got what you wanted, you would have been so happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, you were angry or sad or frustrated. Now, at the time when the situation happened, you might have been trying to blame other people, because that's what the mind will typically do, is try to blame other people. But with these fresh eyes, with this new wisdom, look at that situation and try to figure out, what was it that you were longing, yearning for? What was the craving? What was the expectation? And if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been so happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, you were angry or frustrated. If you can't see it, let me know and I will help you. Because students have asked me plenty of questions over the years. I had this one student one time ask me, they said, David, I went to work the other day. My house looked beautiful. When I came home, my wife had this craft project all over the house, and I walked in and I got frustrated. How did my mind cause this? Because that's what I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you that your mind is causing your own discontentedness. How did my mind cause this? Didn't she cause me to be upset because she's the one who messed up the house? The answer is no. She didn't cause you to be upset. What caused your frustration is that you were craving for this house to look a certain way permanently. You had an expectation. And when you went to work, you expected the house to look exactly the same when you came home. And when you came home, you met with impermanence, and your mind didn't understand that impermanence. And now you got angry or frustrated. And just like your house can't look that way permanently, the way it looks now with your wife's craft project all over the house, that's not permanent either. She will put it away, or maybe you'll help her put it away at some point, right? So the mind craves permanence, and you need to be able to see it in your own life. If you got so excited when you booked your tickets to come to Thailand, your flights, you got so excited about booking your tickets, and now when you showed up at the airport, your flight was delayed or canceled, you probably sat in the waiting area for 2 or 3 hours being frustrated the whole time because the mind was longing, yearning to go to Thailand. It wanted every single plane to take off on time, and every single plane can't take off on time. There's going to be a maintenance issue, a crew issue, a weather issue. There's going to be some issue where these planes can't take off permanently on time. But if you're craving and longing, yearning for every single plane to take off on time, you'll be frustrated when your plane's not taking off on time, right? So you need to be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because what the mind does is when it doesn't understand the second noble truth, is it will falsely associate those painful feelings as coming from something external, right? The mind will firmly believe that other people are causing you to be angry. I'm sure you've been in arguments before with people where you've been adamantly trying to convince them to stop doing what they're doing because what they are doing are making you angry or frustrated or sad or some other discontent feeling. You might have been in bitter, knockdown, drag-out fights, right? But they weren't the ones who were causing you to be angry. Sure, they could have been doing something unwise, but that's not what's causing you to be angry or frustrated. So when your anger is arising, you're going to attribute it to something external. And now what you're going to do is you're going to tend to push those people away, or you're going to push that situation away. You might have pushed friends or family members out of your life already. This is what we do because we don't have the wisdom to understand. So we will push people out of our life thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see that that doesn't solve the problem because you still get angry, you still get annoyed, you still get frustrated. Or the second thing that you might do is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, right? It's like almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to convince them through fear to do things your way. It's like, do things my way, right? The mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled in that situation. Or you might be putting your expectations on people, pressuring them and trying to control them to do things your way. And people might be doing this to you too, right? People push away, they're bitter, harsh, and hostile, or they put their expectations on people, trying to control them because they're trying to get those cravings fulfilled. So when you don't understand the second noble truth, you will walk around thinking that the problem is all external, particularly because you have an ego in your mind, thinking that you're perfect. Everybody else is the problem, right? But that's just your ego speaking, right? If everyone else was the problem, they should be here in order to learn, right? You're perfect. You can go home, right? That's not the case, right? But that's what the ego will tend to think, right? So as long as your mind doesn't understand the second noble truth, you'll keep thinking that the problem is external when it's really internal within your own mind. Because if the problem was actually external, you could never solve it. If other people are causing you to be angry, you could never solve your discontentedness. You could never get rid of your anger because you can't train 8 billion people to do things your way. So the Buddha didn't go around and train everyone in the world to do things his way. He trained his mind to be able to get to the peace and joy. So when you understand impermanence, that you're living in an impermanent world, but yet the mind's craving permanence, now you can start to transform your mind because you can start working internally within your own mind. Because once you understand the cause of the problem, then the elimination of the problem is in the third noble truth. The third noble truth is explaining that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you can see very clearly that craving, desire, attachment is the cause of your discontent feelings, well, if you eliminate the cause, you eliminate the effect, right? All you got to do is eliminate the cause. If you eliminate the cause, you eliminate the effect. So eliminating craving, desire, attachment is what's going to eliminate your discontentedness. And the craving, desire, attachment is in your mind. It's not the object itself. It's the way the mind's longing, yearning for the object. And the way that you do this to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments is through the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the complete, perfect plan that's going to guide you in how to eliminate all your longing, yearning, and your craving and chasing after the objects of your affection. There's these 8 individual factors that are going to help you to be able to do this. And it starts with right view. Having the right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that it's your own craving, desire, attachment. It's not other people that are causing this. Wrong view would be to blame other people for your feelings. If you blame other people for your feelings, you're looking in the wrong spot and you'll never actually solve this problem. So you need to be able to look inward. You need to be introspective. You need to be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So now and forever, whenever you're discontent, rather than looking to blame other people, look inward. Try to figure out, what am I craving? What am I longing? What am I yearning for? Right? Because if you can figure that out and you can let that go, your craving, desire, attachment will be eliminated. And now you can experience peace and joy. So that boyfriend or girlfriend that you broke up with, and now the mind is holding on to that person and wanting them to be permanent. If your mind lets go and realize, you know what, if they want to be with someone else, so be it. Or if they want to move to another part of the world, so be it. That's their choice. Goodbye. It's been nice to spend time with you. I appreciate our relationship. Be well, right? And now you can just maintain your peace and you can maintain your joy. But when you hold on to them and want them to be permanent in your life and they're choosing to leave, that's where you're going to be experiencing painful feelings. So you need to establish right view, which is understanding it's your own mind that's causing these feelings and the mind needs to let go. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions on the Four Noble Truths, because it's so important to establish right view and understanding what's causing these feelings. Do you guys have any questions? Remember, for those of you guys online, you can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. No questions? Okay. So now I'm going to go into right intention, and then afterwards we're going to take a break after this. Okay, so here's the Buddha's words on right intention. All of these don't take the same amount of time to teach. It's just right view that takes a while to teach because it's so important to really establish right view. So here's right intention. Some people translate this as right thinking or right thought. Okay, so it's, in what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So there's 3 things here. He's talking about renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. You need to have the thinking or the thought or the intention of these things. What renunciation is that you're willing to let go of your false beliefs, your false opinions, your false views, and your unwholesomeness. There are certain things that are in your mind right now that are completely untrue, and your mind's holding on to those. That's the whole reason why you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration, all these other things, is your certain lack of wisdom that your mind has. And as long as you hold on to those things and you're not willing to let them go, you won't get to enlightenment. So you're going to need to let those go. It's like having an open mind. Right? So one of the very first things that you need to be willing to let go of is that other people are causing you to be angry. You're going to need to let that go. That is a false belief, right? But you're not getting rid of your false beliefs by bringing in new beliefs. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are. You're bringing in wisdom because you're independently verifying the truth. And when you see that this wisdom that you're bringing in from the Buddha is conflicting with your beliefs, you're going to need to recognize that and be like, whoa, I need to get rid of this belief. It is not serving me well at all. Holding on to this belief that other people are causing you to be angry it is not serving you well at all. It's leading you down more and more anger and going around and having broken relationships. So there's multiple things that you're going to need to be willing to let go of. Your false beliefs, your opinions and views, and there's certain unwholesome moral conduct in terms of the way you speak and the way you interact with people through your speech and your actions. You're going to need to be willing to get rid of that unwholesomeness. If you hold on to that, you won't be able to experience enlightenment. So that's the first part, having the willingness to let go and give up your unwholesomeness and the mind's false beliefs, its misperceptions, its misunderstandings. Then you're going to need the intention of non-ill will. What ill will is like the animosity, the bitterness, the anger, the hatred, and all those lesser versions. That's actually all coming from your own mind. Sometimes people think it's other people that are causing you to be angry, but it's your own mind that's doing that. Even when you dislike other people, that's coming from your own mind. It's not coming from other people. You have certain expectations in your mind of things you want from this person, and you have a template in your mind about how everybody is supposed to be. That's the craving for permanence. And when somebody meets your expectations, you like them. But when they don't meet your expectations, you dislike them. Right? This is coming from your own mind. It's not coming from the other person. So you're going to need to be willing to practice the intention or the thinking or the thought of non-ill will, where you're practicing loving kindness or goodwill towards all beings, having a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Then you're going to need the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other beings. Because as long as you cause harm to others, harm is going to come back to you. This is the natural law that you're going to learn about here in a little bit. That whenever you put out harm, harm's going to come back to you. Now, you can't cause someone else to be discontent. Just like people can't cause you to be discontent, you can't cause other people to be discontent. So if your mom or your dad or your brothers or sisters are claiming that you are making them angry, you can smile and just know that you're not, right? But you can cause somebody harm. Causing someone harm is to cause harm to their material possessions, to their physical body, or to their reputation. If you're causing other people harm, then harm is going to come to you. Because the way the unenlightened mind functions is when someone harms a person who's unenlightened, that person's going to want to harm you back, right? So anytime you put out harm is going to come back to you. So the Buddha teaches you to have the thinking or the thought or the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm. So this is right intention. The intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. So now just a little bit of a summary before we take our break is that right view is the Four Noble Truths. Essentially accepting responsibility for your own feelings, intentions, speech, and actions. Understanding that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing these feelings, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's not other people that are causing these feelings. That is right view. Wrong view would be to blame other people for what it is that you're experiencing. So you need to establish right view, where more and more you're looking inward to be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Then right intention is to practice the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Renunciation is the willingness to let go, give up your false beliefs, opinions, and views, your unwholesomeness. Be willing to have goodwill or genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, and the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm. This is the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path, right view and right intention. So do you guys have any questions on this? Usually if I tell you you're going to take a break after this, I usually don't get any questions, right? Oh, you have a question? Oh, right. Brave man.
The question for the right intention. Imagine that you are in a situation, for example, that you have a problem with your neighbor, and because he's doing some noise or something, and you want to talk with this person, and because you don't want to hurt, you try to do in the right way, that is having a nice conversation if he can turn off the volume or something like that. But he continues doing. And I don't know if some people decide that, I mean, even you don't have to be angry or mad. Maybe you know that the wise decision is to look like mad to the other person, so he reacts and solves the problem. But I don't know if it's something that you can do these things from peace.
Yeah, that's trying to fear somebody into doing things your way.
Yeah.
You would be disinterested in doing that. So when we come back from break, I'm going to teach you the moral conduct, and you'll be able to see how to interact with that neighbor in a wise way. And then you're going to need to be content with whatever decision that they make, rather than trying to force them or control them to do things your way. That's what the anger and the harshness and bitterness is trying to accomplish. The mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled, and it thinks the way to do that is be harsh and bitter and angry at this person and fear them into doing things your way, where there's a better way. There's a better way of life, and that's what the Buddha taught.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so now it is 10 minutes to 11. Let's take a 20-minute break where we come back at 10 minutes after 11. Give you guys a chance to relax, spend time with each other, use the bathroom, stretch, and all that stuff. So I'll see you guys in 20 minutes, okay? All right, take care. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get restarted since it's time to come back from our break. So welcome back to all of you guys. We're going to continue forward with the Eightfold Path, building on what we've talked about so far, which is this wisdom section. We've been talking about right view and right intention, and I've been using the words of the Buddha to help you guys to be able to understand that with right view, the Buddha is helping you to see that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings. It's craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, wanting, expecting things to be a certain way. And then that motivates unskillful behavior when we become angry or sad or frustrated. And then the Buddha taught you right intention, where you're having the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness to let go. Right? Now we're going to move into the moral conduct section, but building on this wisdom, right? Because if you thought that other people were causing you to be angry and frustrated and sad and all these other discontent feelings, when you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile through your speech and your actions, you probably feel justified in your actions. You probably feel justified in the way that you speak. But once you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then you realize, oh my goodness, I need to clean up the way that I talk to people, the way that I interact with people. I need wisdom of how to do this. So the Buddha is going to help you to understand that wisdom through right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And what he's going to be teaching you is what's called the natural law of karma. We're going to talk about this in detail on Thursday, but here in right speech, right action, and right livelihood, he's going to help you see this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result. Now, some people refer to this as karma. You might have heard that. That's the Sanskrit version of this. The Pali language, which the original source teachings of the Buddha in the Pali language, uses this word karma. It's referring to this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's that whenever you're making wise decisions, it produces wholesome karma, or wholesome results. When you're making unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome karma, or unwholesome results. And it's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. Whatever you do, either wholesome or unwholesome, you are going to experience the results of that. So when you're out there in the world with the lack of wisdom of the good, wholesome moral conduct that is going to promote harmonious relationships, you're going to be out there causing damage in your relationships. And now this is going to come back to you. So in the relationships that you're struggling with right now, it's because you don't have the wisdom of this moral conduct, and you're out there doing things that are unwise, and now that unwholesome results are coming back to you. But when you gradually see the wise moral conduct that the Buddha is sharing with you, he's going to help you to see wise decision making around your moral conduct. And now you can function harmoniously. But you're not going to be able to snap your fingers and instantly implement this stuff. It's going to take gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, right? Because you have those cravings in your mind motivating the unskillful conduct. So when you see this moral conduct here, it's not rules or commandments. The Buddha's not giving you rules or commandments. Nobody will ever get to enlightenment following rules and commandments. What he's actually showing you is wise moral conduct that's going to produce wholesome results, or wholesome karma for you. And he's teaching you how to eliminate craving, desire, attachment that is motivating unskillful conduct. So here's the first one, right speech. I'll show you what I mean by that. And what, monks, is right speech? Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. So here he's talking about 4 things, and all of these are based in craving, desire, attachment, longing, and yearning. And whenever you're making decisions through craving, desire, attachment, it's going to produce unwholesome results, or unwholesome karma. So lying is where we're telling falsehoods, right? There's some craving in the mind. It wants something, and if it tells the truth, the mind thinks, I'm not going to get it. So therefore, let me lie instead. So there's craving in the mind that's producing this lying. And now, if you lie, it's going to produce unwholesome results. People are going to discover those lies. They're going to consider you to be unreliable, undependable, untrustworthy. And now, like say in a professional environment, you're not going to have advancement in your career because your boss and your coworkers are going to find out that you lie. And when it's time to staff a certain project that could be really beneficial for your growth and development as a professional, they're going to overlook you because you're lying, right? So you can look and see that whenever you've lied in the past, because remember, you're not believing this here, you would like to independently verify it. Whenever you've lied in the past, it's producing unwholesome results for you. At the very least, if you've done a lot of lying, you could see that your mind was obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another, and now you're having to keep all that straight. So how could you get to peace and joy, this enlightened mental state where the mind's completely calm, if your mind is obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another? So by eliminating lying and just speaking the truth, you never have to worry. You know, you're speaking the truth all the time. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. Then there's refraining from slander. This is gossip. This is like trying to damage somebody else's reputation. There's a craving in there. What the mind is doing is it wants to look good in front of other people. And the mind thinks, if I can damage other people's reputation, if I can degrade and diminish them, I will look better. Right? This is the craving that the mind has. And it's based in ill will, and it's coming from ignorance as well, the unknowing of true reality. It's kind of like the person walks into a room, everybody's holding a candle, and the person's like, well, if I put out their candle, then my candle will shine brighter. Well, if you're in a dark room, you'd like everybody's candle to be shining, right? You don't need to put out anybody's candle in order for your candle to shine brighter. Let everybody's candle shine bright, right? But the mind doesn't think that way in the unenlightened state. It wants to damage and destroy other people through gossip and slander and through degrading others. And this is coming from craving, desire, attachment. You can see this and independently verify it through situations that you've been in or by looking around the world, and you can see that it's very unwise to gossip and slander people. At the height of this, people get murdered, right? This is why, like an investigative reporter who's on the news reporting about something, next thing you know, they end up dead, right? The Buddha is not teaching you the way the world should be. He's teaching you the way the world is. And that if you go out in the world and you damage other people's reputation through your speech, then people are going to want to harm you. So at the height of this, people can end up murdered, or your material possessions destroyed, or beat up, or some other thing like that. At the very least, people are going to be gossiping and slandering about you. If you've ever been in groups of people where you've been gossiping and slandering, and you kind of turn your back and you walk away from the group for a period of time, they're gossiping and slandering about you because you got them so used to gossiping and slandering. Now, when you're not around, they're going to be gossiping and slandering about you, right? So if you don't like people gossiping and slandering about you, you're going to need to eliminate gossip and slander yourself. Right? So that's why the Buddha has this in here. And again, you can independently verify this. Then there's harsh speech. This is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. There's a craving there, right? If you have harsh speech, there's something you're longing, yearning for. And now the mind thinks that if I can be bitter and harsh and hostile to this person, they will do things my way. So the mind is trying to get its cravings fulfilled. That's why it's harsh. You can see this with a life partner. You can see this if you have children or things like this. You can see where you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with the people who are closest with you. You tend to be the most harsh with them because that's where your cravings and your attachments are the strongest, with the people who are close to you. So you might be bitter and harsh and hostile. So you're going to need to pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. And you're going to need to learn how to speak gentle, because whenever you're speaking harsh and bitter, there's a craving that's motivating it, and it's going to produce unwholesome results in your day-to-day life. Then there's refraining from frivolous speech. What frivolous speech is where you have a craving to just talk, right? And you're not talking about anything purposeful or beneficial. It's just a craving to talk. You might have been around people like this, or you might have been this person where it's just like yada, 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 yada. A yada, 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 a yada, yada, yada. It's not really a conversation. It's more like broadcasting. right? The person's like broadcasting to you, right? So what you would like to do is you would like to have a conversation with people. And this is where you can have harmonious relationships with people. If you practice frivolous speech, eventually people are just going to tune you out. It's like, oh my goodness, he's always talking. She's always talking, like, oh, I don't even want to listen to you, right? So you like to be purposeful and beneficial when you're speaking, that you're not speaking with a craving just to talk, yada, 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 yada. So this is the top level of right speech. These are 4 aspects that are helping you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. And that might be where you hang out for a while, is working on these 4. Then, as you are improving that and you're getting better and better at that, you'd like to go deeper into a deeper teaching. This isn't part of the Eightfold Path, but it integrates into the Eightfold Path. This is called the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. This is what's ultimately going to help you to get to enlightenment. That you speak at the proper time, you speak the truth, you speak gentle, you speak beneficially, and you speak with a mind of loving kindness. Speaking at the proper time is to make sure that you're not interrupting people, right? Because you don't like it when people interrupt you. So if you went around interrupting people, there's a certain craving there. You're not willing to wait your turn to talk. You want to jump in and talk right away, right? So that's going to help you eliminate that craving. The other aspect of speaking at the proper time is to make sure your mind is prepared to talk. When you're angry, when you're frustrated, when you're agitated or annoyed, it's not the proper time to talk. And you can see in situations where you have done that, it hasn't turned out well, right? You've been bitter and harsh and hostile and it damaged relationships. You've probably lost friends or co-workers that you were close with. They've probably gone away from you when you were bitter, harsh, and hostile. Relationships have ended from that. That's because you weren't speaking at the proper time. And then the third aspect of speaking the proper time is making sure it's the proper time for the other person to speak. If they're angry, if they're frustrated, if they're agitated or annoyed, it's not the proper time to talk because nothing you say is going to be getting in. It's better to just walk away from the situation. So let's just say you come home and you get a notice in the mail that you're late on your rent and you're going to be kicked out of your house in 3 days. Well, let's just say your life partner or your roommate is coming home from work. You're not interested in jumping on that person right away. That's not the proper time to be talking. They just got home. Let them come in, take their shoes off, put their bags down, get some water, get some food. Maybe 30 minutes, an hour later. Hey, honey, is this a good time to talk? I've got something important to talk about. And if they say, no, it's not a good time, it's been a hard day at work, can we talk about this tomorrow? Well, if you don't have a craving, desire, attachment, you should be able to be like, yeah, sure, no problem. Because you know you got 3 days to solve this and you're not going to be able to solve it right now anyway. So just wait. Right? But if you have a craving desire, you're going to want to talk right now, right? But maybe they say, yes, this is a good time to talk. So that's where you share with them what's going on so you can fix it, right? So you need to make sure it's the proper time, not interrupting, making sure your mind's the proper time and make sure it's the proper time for that person. Then you'd like to speak the truth. That's also talked about up here. It's the same thing that we talked about, ensuring that you're only speaking the truth, that you've confirmed the things, not just not telling a deliberate lie, but you've confirmed what it is that you're sharing, that you're not just spreading conspiracy theories of things that are unfounded, right? You would like to make sure that what you're sharing is the truth. So you can be a true speaker, reliable, dependable, one that people can trust. Then you would like to speak gently. This is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You know, in the Thai language, we have a lot of ways to be able to speak, and people know that we're being polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. We have different words that we use, prefixes and suffixes. People know when you're speaking polite and kind and friendly right away when you start speaking Thai, because this language was informed by Buddhist teachings, so it's been structured around all of that. But the languages that you speak, maybe not. So you're going to need to look at the languages that you speak and figure out how to ensure that it's the tone, the tempo, and the word choice is polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, that it's gentle. So like in the English language, I tend to use the word ma'am and sir frequently, so people know I'm being polite right away. Or I use thank you or sorry, or I apologize in certain situations, right? You can use these things, right? So you can soften up the way that you speak with people, and this is going to help you when you're interacting with individuals. It's going to produce more and more wholesome karma for you. Then you would like to speak beneficially. Speaking beneficially is more about the method that you're speaking, not so much about the topic. It's not like there's an approved list of topics. It's more about the method. Are you clear? Are you concise? Are you precise in the way that you speak? That you're not speaking with frivolous speech, because you would like to be clear and concise and to the point, so that when you're talking, like in a professional environment or with your personal friends, that you can be influential and you can help people, right? Whereas if you're just yada, 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 and you're unbeneficial, unpurposeful, people are just going to tune you out. So you would like to speak purposeful and beneficially. That's what it means to speak beneficially. Then the fifth one here is speaking with a mind of loving kindness. The opposite of that would be inner hate. If you speak with inner hate, it's going to produce unwholesome karma or unwholesome results. But when you can speak with a mind of loving kindness, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, this is what's going to promote harmonious relationships and improvements in your day-to-day life. So this is the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. What we're talking about doing here is talking in a way that's wise, that's producing wholesome results. And you need to be able to see this truth for yourself. Because remember, none of the teachings of the Buddha is based in belief. You need to be able to see that this is truly the natural laws of existence that he's describing to you. So take some situations where the conversation turned out unwell, where it became a very difficult conversation for you and for them, and it maybe ended not so well. You can look at these 5 factors, and you and or the other person wasn't practicing these 5 factors. Because remember, the natural laws of existence, they affect you whether you're aware of them or not. So those conversations that haven't gone well for you, you can see that you weren't speaking at the proper time, or you weren't speaking the truth, or you weren't speaking gentle, or you weren't speaking beneficially, or you weren't speaking with a mind of loving kindness. And this is why the conversation didn't go well, right? And maybe the other person wasn't speaking that way too. But then also, there's conversations that have gone well. Maybe at break, you guys had some wonderful conversations with each other. And at other times in your life, you have had conversations that have gone really well. You can see that you were practicing these 5 factors without even realizing it, right? So when you're practicing these 5 factors, because it's the natural laws of existence, your conversations will go well, whether you're aware of these natural laws or not. So that's how you can independently verify that what the Buddha is teaching you here is true. And now what you do is you dial this into your life more and more closely, right? The people that you're the closest with, your life partners, your children, your parents, your siblings, people like this, you'll find it the most difficult to speak in this way all the time, because you have craving, desire, attachment in those relationships. But as you're getting rid of that craving, desire, attachment more and more, that's what's going to make it easier for you to be able to practice this 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And that's where the mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path comes in, that when you learn that, it's going to help you to practice something like right speech. Because as long as you're out there in the world using wrong speech, it's producing unwholesome results for you. And you're going to need to deal with that. It's all going to be coming back to you. So there's something in the Thai language that we say that is called barami. This is a Thai word. It's called barami. If you live in a Thai village, there's typically going to be village elders in that village that everybody knows is very successful. And when I say they're very successful, I don't mean necessarily wealthy, right? Because that's not necessarily a measure of success. What success is someone has harmonious relationships. Anybody can go out and make money, but not everybody can have harmonious relationships. It takes real wisdom to be able to have harmonious relationships. So these elders in the village, they have barami, which means the one who people listen to. So if you're in a Thai village and you need help with your career, your personal life, your professional life with your boss or your coworkers, or maybe you're having challenges with your life partner, your children, you might decide to go to the village elders and get help because they have barami, the one who people listen to, because they're very successful in harmonious relationships. And that's, people know that they have barami because they speak this way, that they're regularly speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, that they're not causing harm to people through their speech. So people know, like, they're very successful. They have very harmonious relationships. They can help me in this situation. So if you'd like to be influential and helpful in whatever communities you're in, whether it's personal or professional, you can establish barami, the one who people listen to, where when you're speaking with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, more and more you'll be able to see that you're influential in being able to help people around you, whether it's personally or professionally. But it's not going to be 1 week or 1 month that you're practicing this and all of a sudden everyone's going to be coming to you for advice, right? It's going to need to be many months and many years of you practicing this. And now more and more people will see you as being very successful because you're going to have harmonious relationships with everyone around you. Right? So during the lifetime of the Buddha, they refer to this as right speech, because that's all that was going on during the lifetime of the Buddha was speech. But we might think about this as right communication, because we do a lot more than just speech. We have social media posts, text messages, voice messages, emails. Yes, we have speech as well, but we have all these other ways of communicating too. And if you went over to your computer when you were angry and you were pounding out an email, pounding on the keyboard, that's not the proper time to communicate, right? That's going to lead to difficulties. If you send that email out into the world with that bitterness and harshness and hostility, that's exactly what's going to come back to you. So you would like to communicate at the proper time, right? And all these other factors, you would like to use them in all your communication. If you went into a job interview and you like knocked it out of the park with your speech and they were like, oh my goodness, this guy, this girl, we would like to hire this person right now and give them a massive salary. They're so impressive. But if they got on your social media and they saw that you were bitter and harsh and hostile in your social media, you're probably not going to get the job, right? So you would like all your communication in all parts of your life to be with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And that's what's going to produce wholesome karma for you, or the wholesome results. Okay? So you can communicate with right speech, dialing this in more and more. First, starting with these 4 factors up here, and then moving into these down here. In this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, I go through each of these factors in detail. I explain them very thoroughly, and I give you lots of examples, because speech is a way that you can really cause problems in your life. So if you guys get a version of this book, either downloading it, take it and go print it, get printed versions here by reimbursing us, or you can get it on Amazon, you'll be able to see what I'm teaching you there, and you can keep that fresh in your mind. Because when I was learning the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, in the morning, I would kind of look at the 5 factors, and I would kind of like go out in my day and have all my conversations. And then at lunchtime, I'll kind of look at them again, and I'd be like, what did I do well? What can I improve? Or what did I do well? I would kind of like tweak it. And then in the afternoon, my mind was fresh with the 5 factors. And then in the evening, I would sometimes look at it again and refresh my mind to be sure that I was hitting the 5 factors of well-spoken speech in each conversation. So you're going to need to refresh your memory, and you're going to need something like the book or these posters, or something like this, where you have a learning tool to be able to dial this in more and more closely. It's the 5 factors of well-spoken speech that's going to guide you to enlightenment. But between now and the time that you learn the 5 factors of well-spoken speech and you have them deeply rooted in the mind, you might remember this, that if you can speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations, that's what you would like to do. You would like to have no place in your life for a negative relationship, right? You would like to always be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. How to do that is the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. So if you just were polite, kind, friendly, respectful, and you didn't know what that meant, it's not going to lead to your enlightenment. So that's why you need something like the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. But sometimes you might be on a phone call with your mom, and you're not going to be like, hey mom, hold on a second, I'm starting to feel a little bit angry. Let me check these 5 factors in my book. I need to look at the book, and then I can talk to you in a little bit, right? You're not going to be able to do that. You're in the heat of the moment. You're having a conversation with mom. You're going to need to decide what to do in the situation. And if you can remember polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, that will guide you to maybe finishing up that conversation and then just kind of moving off and now look at the 5 factors and be like, oh yeah, I wasn't speaking gentle. That's what it was. And I wasn't speaking with a mind of loving kindness. And it wasn't the proper time because my mind was angry. Okay, now I see what I need to do, right? But just remember this: polite, kind, friendly, respectful. But then get deeper into the 5 factors of well-spoken speech and implement that more and more. Then there's something called right action. This is the 4th factor. Here's what the Buddha teaches. In what, monks, is right action? Refraining from taking life, refraining from taking what is not given, refraining from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. What he's teaching you here is 3 bodily actions that are very significant that would cause harm. And if you cause harm in any of these ways, harm is going to come back to you. He's not giving you an exhaustive list here, because he can't list out every single bodily action that is going to cause harm. But he's giving you 3 very important ones: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. We're going to talk about this in more detail tomorrow when we discuss the 5 precepts. Here, he's just giving you some really impactful ones. I like to kind of hone in on this one of sexual misconduct even here. We'll talk about it when we get to the 5 precepts tomorrow, but it's important to understand that the Buddha never talks about same-gender relationships as being harmful, because 2 loyal, loving, consenting adults choosing to have sex with each other, they're not causing harm to anybody. The Buddha was aware of same-gender relationships 2,500 years ago because they were happening then too. There's never been a time in history where every man had sex with a woman. And there's never been a time in history where every woman had sex with a man, because that would be permanence. And we understand the universal truth of impermanence. We understand the world's impermanent. So ever since the beginning of humanity, people have had sex with opposite genders and people have had sex with the same genders. But when you see what the Buddha teaches on sexual misconduct, he talks about having sex with minors. He talks about having sex against someone's consent, like if you were to rape someone. He talks about going outside of your relationships where you're having a relationship. So I like to highlight that this doesn't include same-gender relationships. So if you're someone who has a same-gender relationship, it's completely normal. Or if you know someone who does, it's completely normal and you're not causing any harm. So the Buddha understood this 2,500 years ago. This is how wise this individual was, right? Even 50 years ago, if somebody said what I just said, they'd be like, huh, what are you talking about? Today, we have countless people in the world who don't understand that same-gender relationships aren't causing harm. So the Buddha understood this 2,500 years ago. That's how wise this individual was, right? So we'll explore this more tomorrow when we get into the 5 precepts, and you'll be able to see in detail what he's teaching about sexual misconduct. But essentially what he's teaching you here is 3 impactful bodily actions, but you need to be able to apply this to all bodily actions, right? Notice he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face. Right? He doesn't say that because if you understand right action, you can figure that out. That if you walked up to someone and punched someone in the face, they're probably going to pull out a knife or a gun, or they're going to punch you back, or their friends or family are going to come attack you, right? So you know that it's unwise to walk up to someone and punch them in the face. Notice he doesn't say, don't drag your suitcase through the aisle of the plane, running over people's feet and bumping into their knees. Well, if you understand right action, that you wouldn't be interested in causing harm through your bodily actions, you can figure that out for yourself, because airplanes didn't even exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. So he wouldn't have been able to give you an exhaustive list, but he is helping you with these first 3 to show you the really big, impactful ones. And then you need to figure out all the others. Right? So this is right action. And the Buddha does teach a couple of other things about right action. He talks about substances that cause heedlessness and gambling. He does teach these kinds of things, but he never gives you an exhaustive list because you need to have the wisdom to be able to figure that out for yourself. That's why, for example, you're just sitting here where you're at now and you're not poking the person next to you in the eyes. right? You're not poking them in the eyes sitting next to you because you know that's wrong action. That would be unwise. If you poke the person in the eyes that's sitting next to you, harmful things are going to start happening for you. That's why you're choosing not to do that, right? So the Buddha doesn't give you an exhaustive list, but if you understand what he's teaching you is to not cause harm through your bodily actions, then you realize that that's wise and that that'll produce the best results for you, or the most wholesome karma. Then the Buddha teaches about right livelihood. A livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life. If you choose to sustain your life off of causing harm to others, harm is going to come to you. So the Buddha teaches you here in the Eightfold Path, in what, monks, is right livelihood. Here, monks, the noble disciple, which is a very close student who's learning the teachings very well, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. So here he's just saying something very general and very broad, and he's pointing to his teachings on right livelihood. Then you need to go find his teachings on right livelihood. So that's what I've got here for you, is there's this first fold of purification that I'm going to teach you. This one here is a teaching where he's explaining 5 different livelihoods that would cause harm. And if you did any of these, it's going to cause harm to others, and you'd be sustaining your life on causing harm to others. So therefore, harm's going to come to you. He talks about business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. If you have business in any of those, you're causing harm to others, and you're sustaining your life off of causing harm to others. And now harm is going to come to you. But remember, none of this is to be believed. You're not interested in believing any of this. You would like to independently verify it. So let's just take one of these. I'll show you how to do this. I'm not going to have time to do all 5, but you can do it yourself. I'll show you how to do this. If you take the substances that cause heedlessness, let's just say I stood on the street corner and I was selling crystal methamphetamine into the community, heroin and cocaine and things like this. I'm causing harm to the community because now those people are going out and stealing in order to bring me money. They're getting addicted to these substances. Maybe they're robbing, maybe they're selling their bodies for sex. And now they're doing all of that in order to bring me money in order for me to support my life. Well, now standing on the street corner, I can easily get beat up. I can get robbed. I can get murdered. This is the harm that's coming back to me for me causing harm in the community. At the very least, I'm going to get arrested, or I can get addicted to these substances myself. Now, this is an example with illicit substances, but this is the natural law of karma. This is a natural law that's functioning at a much higher level. In most places, it's illegal to sell crystal methamphetamine and heroin on the street corner, but there are some places that it's actually legal to do that, right? There's places in the world that the government has said, hey, you can go sell that alcohol at that liquor store. You can go work at that liquor store. We're not going to arrest you. Those are human laws. That's the laws of society. They are imperfect. They are not functioning perfectly. The natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level than the human laws, because human laws are created by human beings. They are imperfect. But the natural law of karma is functioning at a higher level. So you're going to need to understand this through the natural law of karma. And what you might come to the conclusion of is that it's unwise to work in that liquor store or that bar or wherever it is, because the liquor store is where people are going to come to rob you and beat you up and murder and steal the alcohol that are there. At the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele from time to time. And how can you ever get to a peaceful and joyful life if you're constantly having to deal with intoxicated people, right? So this natural law of karma is functioning at a much higher level. It's not just the human laws. So while the government might say, yeah, you can work at that liquor store, we're not going to arrest you. If you understand the natural law of karma, you might realize that that's unwise. You might choose not to do that. So you can walk through each one of these and see how the Buddha is describing this, and you can see examples in the world of how it's unwise to sustain your life in any of these 5 ways. Then the Buddha teaches you how to perform your livelihood to ensure that you experience the best results, because he's helping you to get to a point where you have ambition and enthusiasm and motivation behind your work. You don't have to hate your work. A lot of people do. They drag themselves to work every single day and they feel miserable. But you're not going to be able to get to peace and joy with an enlightened mind if you continue to do that. So the Buddha is trying to help you to see how to get to this peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life where you can thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing. So he's teaching you how to be successful at your livelihood, that you're eliminating scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. What scheming is like corruption. Let's just say that I was a politician and I was like the mayor of a town, or I was like a lawmaker, making laws. There's no harm in that. I'm not causing any harm by being a politician. But if I was scheming and I was corrupt, there's some harm that I'm causing there. So now 10, 15 years into my career, people found out that I'm corrupt. They're not going to reelect me. And now I'm going to have trouble in my livelihood to be able to sustain my life. Or say if somebody was doing flattery. What flattery is like giving insincere comments just to be able to get somebody to purchase things from you, right? Like your business partners, your customers, or things like this. If you've ever been into a store where you walked into a store and they're like, oh my goodness, that shirt looks so beautiful on you. It really brings out the shape of your face and the colors of your eyes. I have this great pair of earrings that are going to go really well with that shirt. Come over here. Let me show them to you. You're probably like, you probably just kind of turn around and leave the store. You don't feel good even being in there, right? So if you are just flattering people in order to buy things from you, they're going to see through that and you're not going to be able to be successful in your livelihood. So the Buddha teaches you not to do that. Then there's hinting. What hinting is like being unclear about your communication in your work environment. So let's just say all of us were on a project team and we needed to go brief the boss about what it is that we're working on. We'd like to be clear and concise and precise and to the point. And that's what's going to help us to be really successful in that livelihood. Where if we're just kind of meandering around and not really clear on what it is that we're talking about, we're not going to be very successful in our career. Then the Buddha teaches you to eliminate belittling. This is like degrading and diminishing your customers, your coworkers, your business partners, your competition, people like this. If you're degrading people in your livelihood, it's not going to look favorable on you. Sometimes people think that it's wise to degrade their competition, make them look bad so it makes us look better. But your customers will see through that. They're not going to be interested in that. So if somebody asks you about your competition, you just say, I'm not really sure what they do, but here's what I can do for you. Here's how I can help you. No need to degrade them. If they would like to go talk to your competition, then go talk to your competition. But here's what I can do for you. This is what I'm able to help you with. So no need to belittle anybody. Pursuing gain with gain, what this is like just taking a job because all you care about is the money. Right? You just want that paycheck, right? That you don't really care about the product or the service. You just are there for the money and that's it. If you ever had this kind of job, maybe initially you were so happy and excited about this more money that you were getting, but then over time when that craving was extinguished, you probably felt very bored and very mundane. You might have felt like you were in a dead-end job, that you were just showing up every day for a paycheck, and that's all you cared about, right? If you're doing this kind of thing, how can you get to peace and joy, right? You would like to get to the point where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful, and you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing. Here in Thailand, you might go down the street and you might see some lady on the corner selling mango and sticky rice for 40 baht. And she's got like a big old smile on her face, right? She might have woke up in the morning, went out in her mango grove, picked each one of those mangoes, washed them off, brushed them off, brought them to the market. She's sitting there slicing up her mangoes so joyfully, combining it together with the sticky rice, pouring the coconut milk over it and handing it to you. And she's collecting her 40 baht. And she's got the biggest smile on her face, right? She just thoroughly enjoys offering you this mango and sticky rice. Well, that's what you need to do, is you need to find your mango and sticky rice. What's your mango and sticky rice? What is it that you're going to be thoroughly enjoying? And even if you didn't get paid for it, you would still do that thing if you could, right? That of course, you're going to need to get paid for whatever it is that you do, because you're going to need to support yourself. But you're enjoying this so much that even if you didn't get paid for it, you would still do it. That's that lady on the corner. She just enjoys giving you that mango and sticky rice. She's kind of collecting the money just to kind of keep things going, right? That's not the real purpose of what it is that she's doing. She just thoroughly enjoys giving you that mango and sticky rice. And that's what you would like to get to. And the Buddha is teaching you not to pursue gain with gain. Don't just go after the money. Do something that you thoroughly enjoy, and that's what's going to promote the most peace and the most joy in your day-to-day life. Okay, so this is what's called the first fold of purification, that you're not practicing any of these 5 livelihoods, and that you practice these here, that you're eliminating scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. That's going to get you to the first level of purification. But then there's a second level of purification beyond this, that I have this in volume 12, chapter 14 of our book series. If you're in between jobs and you're unemployed right now, or you're in a job that you don't really particularly care for, and you're looking to get into a better job that you can really thoroughly enjoy, I suggest you go read volume 12, chapter 14. That's where you're going to see all the teachings of the Buddha on getting to a right livelihood, and you're going to see words from me in there to help you as well. So that's where you'll get the full teaching on right livelihood. Volume 12, chapter 14. Okay? So now, just to summarize the moral conduct section, is right speech, or what we might say is right communication, is to ensure that you're not causing any harm through your verbal conduct, but then all your other communication too, like text, chat, posts, and emails. It should all be harmless, eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. But then in more detail, practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. Then there's right action, ensuring that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions, eliminating killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, but more importantly, not causing any harm through your bodily actions at all. There's plenty of harmful bodily actions that you could do, and you would like to eliminate all of those. Then there's right livelihood. Getting to a point where you have ambition, enthusiasm, motivation in your livelihood, that you're not causing harm by having business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, or poisons. And then you eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. That's the first fold of purification. And if you get your moral conduct up to that point, you're going to experience quite a bit of peacefulness in your life through constantly practicing that moral conduct. Okay, any questions on the moral conduct? Let's see if we have anything online. For those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I don't see any. All right, so now that we understand the wisdom section, and you're starting to learn that, and we built our foundation of that, on top of that, the moral conduct, seeing the wise decision making about how we interact in the world. Now the Buddha is going to teach you the mental discipline, because without the mental discipline, you're going to have a very hard time implementing the moral conduct, right? Because you're in there being, having attachments to your children or your life partner, you're craving and desiring for things to be a certain way. You're going to need the mental discipline in order to help you with the moral conduct. So now I'm going to teach you right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, how to control your mind. That's what's going to really help you with the moral conduct, so you can have sustaining, fulfilling, and long-term relationships. Okay, so these are the words of the Buddha on right effort. Here he says, "In what, monks, is right effort? Here, monks, a monk rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to prevent the arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to overcome evil, unwholesome mental states that have arisen. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to produce unarisen, wholesome mental states. He rouses his will, makes an effort, stirs up energy, exerts his mind, and strives to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not to let them fade away, to bring them to greater growth, to the full perfection of development. This is called right effort. So he's talking about 4 things here to apply effort towards. What he's teaching you is to prevent unwholesome mental states that have not arisen from arising in the mind, to abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind, to produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind, and to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, to increase their growth and bring them to full perfection and development in the mind. So I'm going to use some examples here to help you understand what right effort is. Let's just say that you have certain unwholesome mental states that are not currently in the mind. There's plenty of those. Certain unwholesome things that are remotely, not even remotely in your mind. They're the farthest thing from your mind right now, like killing another human being. That's not even remotely in your mind right now. And the Buddha is saying, apply the effort from preventing those kinds of things from ever coming into your mind, because it's unwholesome and it's going to produce unwholesome results. Then he's teaching you to abandon unwholesome mental states that have arisen in the mind, because there are certain unwholesome mental states that are currently in your mind. If you're unenlightened, you have unwholesome mental states from time to time. And what the Buddha is saying is, when you see those unwholesome mental states arising, apply right effort to cut them off and eliminate them, get them out of your mind. So an example of that might be if you were in an existing relationship and you have a craving for sex outside of your relationship. If so, you're going to need to cut that off and let it go, because it's going to produce harm, that you're going to be causing harm in your relationship by going outside of it and having sex. So you would like to eliminate that from the mind by applying right effort. Or say you have anger and frustration or irritation that's coming up in your mind. That's an unwholesome mental state. You're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of the mind. It's not going to just be gone by itself. You're going to need to apply the effort to get rid of that. Then there's certain wholesome mental states that are not currently in your mind right now, that you're going to need to bring into your mind. You're going to learn about certain wholesome mental states that the mind needs. One of those is generosity. You might find that it's very hard to practice generosity, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. What you're going to learn is that this is actually going to help your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. That as long as you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, there's a certain level of selfishness that the mind's holding on to things. You're unwilling to share with other people. So when you find this out, that the generosity is an important quality to cultivate in your mind, and it's going to train your mind to let go so that you can eliminate discontentedness. If you find that you're not a generous person, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring that generosity into your mind. It's not going to happen naturally. You're going to have to apply the effort to do that. Or say compassion. Let's just say you were indifferent. You could care less about other people's suffering, right? Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. But let's just say that you're indifferent. You see a homeless person, you're like, so what? It's not my friend or family. I don't care, right? Let them deal with their own karma. I don't care, right? Or you see some impoverished children. I don't care. It's not my kids, right? If you had indifference like that, that's a lack of compassion. So if you notice that you're having a lack of compassion, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this into the mind, right? And this is going to help you to develop the wholesome mental states. But then there's certain wholesome mental states that are currently in your mind, that they need to be brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. Loving kindness is a good example of this. You probably have loving kindness in your mind to a certain degree, but it hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. Loving kindness is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. The opposite of this is anger and hatred and ill will, harshness and bitterness. In certain situations, you're probably very loving and kind, but in other situations, you can be quite bitter and harsh and hostile. That's because your loving kindness hasn't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development. You're going to need to apply the effort to rise that loving kindness up in your mind to the point where you can be loving and kind with all people around you. Sympathetic joy is another example of this. Sympathetic joy is the joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. So in some situations, you probably have sympathetic joy. Someone's like, hey, I'm thinking about going to Thailand. And you're like, oh, Thailand's great. I was there. They have great massages. It's wonderful. Hey, there's this lady on the corner that sells mango and sticky rice. Oh, it's really great. You might decide to check her out. Like, she's really, really good, right? You have joy for their success. Oh, you're going to have a great time. That's wonderful for you, right? But now maybe you're at work and there's a new position that opens up. That's a new title, more money, right? And you apply for this new job and somebody else applies for the job and they get the job instead of you. Now you're jealous. Now you're envious, right? That's because your sympathetic joy hasn't been brought to full growth, full perfection, and full development. Maybe this person's walking around the office thinking that they're so great. They got their chest puffed out. They think they're so wonderful. And now they swing by your desk and like, hey, by the way, I got that new job. Right? Maybe your jealousy arises. You're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that out of the mind and rise up this sympathetic joy. Be like, hey, congratulations, pleased to help you, or pleased that you got that job, right? You're going to need to rise that up in your mind, right? So this is what the Buddha is teaching you in right effort. What wholesome qualities are in your mind and what unwholesome qualities are in your mind are going to be unique to you. These are just examples to help you understand how to apply right effort. You're going to need to prevent the unwholesome qualities from coming into your mind. You're going to need to eliminate the unwholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. You're going to need to bring in the wholesome qualities that aren't currently in your mind. And you're going to need to support and encourage the wholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. That's what's going to be right effort. But you wouldn't be able to apply right effort without the next one, which is right mindfulness. You're going to need this in order to apply right effort. So again, I'm going to read it to you and then I'll teach it to you. In what, monks, is right mindfulness? Here, monks, a monk resides, reflecting on body as body, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides, feelings as feelings, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides, reflecting on mind as mind, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. He resides, reflecting on mental objects as mental objects, dedicated, clearly aware and mindful, having put aside craving and worry for the world. This is called right mindfulness. So here he's talking about 4 things: body as body, feelings as feelings, mind as mind, mental objects as mental objects. He's referring to something called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But before we talk about that, let's just talk about mindfulness in general. Okay? Mindfulness in general means awareness of mind, that you would like to have awareness of your mind. How could you ever apply right effort to eliminate the unwholesome qualities and cultivate the wholesome if you don't even know what's going on in your own mind, right? You're going to need awareness of your mind, because sometimes we go through life just plowing through the forest, knocking down the trees, burning up the forest, and we're not paying attention to our own mind. We're not paying attention to the thoughts and ideas and the things that are going on in our own mind. So you're going to need to develop awareness of your mind. Okay? And the next step that I'm going to teach you is going to help you to do that. But you're going to need to develop this awareness of your mind. Now, this word mindfulness is oftentimes used in modern conversations, and people aren't using it in the way that the Buddha taught it. Sometimes people say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? Or someone says, can we do mindful eating? You might hear this. Can we do mindful eating? Right? What they're saying, when you say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? They're saying, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? They're just replacing the word careful with mindful. That's not the way that the Buddha taught this. And if they choose to use it that way, hey, that's on them, right? What you need to do, though, is if you're going to get in touch with these teachings and progress on the path to enlightenment, is understand mindfulness in the way that the Buddha taught it, which means awareness of mind. You would like to have awareness of your mind. Then, once you start working with that for a few months and you start developing awareness of what's going on in your own mind, you would like to develop what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is where you're aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What we're talking about here is the life cycle that discontentedness is going to take, and you need to be able to be aware of this process. Before your mind experiences a feeling, there's some bodily sensation that you're having that you may or may not even be aware of right now. There's tingling, like say something like anger. There's tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is an early warning system. It's alerting you. You're about to get angry. You're about to get frustrated. You're about to get annoyed, right? This is an early warning system that you're going to need to be aware of. And right now, you may or may not be aware of it, but there's bodily sensations that are happening before your mind ever gets a conditioned feeling. Whether it's a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, or neither painful nor pleasant, there's some bodily sensation that's preceding it. And you're going to need to build awareness of that. Because what the Buddha teaches you is that with right effort, you cut that off and let it go. That's where your mindfulness comes in. You're not suppressing your feelings or repressing them. You're actually cutting it off and letting it go before it becomes a feeling. So that early warning system, that bodily sensation, it's like the mind is telling you, hey, I'm about to get a feeling here. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And you're like, nope, not going to let you do that. Right? You cut it off and let it go. Because if you allow the mind to form the conditioned feeling, the mind just stays wired that way, that it continues to get angry, it continues to get frustrated over and over and over and over and over again, because it keeps forming its inner feelings based on some condition. But if you can cut it off and let it go, preventing that feeling from ever entering the mind, you've just saved yourself a whole lot of trouble. Because once the feeling gets into the mind, it's a lot harder to deal with at that point. It's kind of like if you were going to take a boat from Canada to the UK and you were out in the middle of the ocean, you'd like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets into the boat, you got a real problem to deal with. You got to get this water out. But if you can prevent it from ever coming in, hey, you can sail right on through right to the UK. Right? So that's what you'd like to do with your mind, is prevent these conditioned feelings from ever coming into the mind, so the mind doesn't stay wired that way. You essentially rewire your mind to no longer form its inner feelings based on some condition. But because your mind is under training and it hasn't really been fully developed, you're going to experience some conditioned feelings. Between now and enlightenment, you're going to get angry. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to get annoyed. It's only a matter of time. So if you miss it as a bodily sensation, you're going to need to catch it as a feeling and cut it off and let it go there. Because if you don't cut it off and let it go as a feeling, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. For a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, you're going to be grumpy and irritable and frustrated. Have you ever been irritated for a few days or a few weeks? Of course you have, right? We all have, because we didn't know this. We didn't understand this, right? Something happened. There was bodily sensations. You didn't cut it off and let it go because you didn't know that that's what you should do. It became a feeling in the mind. Your mind became wired. It was wired that way. Then it started affecting the condition of your mind. For a few hours, for a few days, for a week or two, you were grumpy and irritable. Right? Then what happens is the mind forms what's called a mental object. This is a deeply rooted container in the mind. Something like in this example is ill will, right? This deeply rooted container. Like right now, you're not angry. You're just sitting here listening to me. But you've got this deeply rooted container of ill will in your mind that if one of your cravings get triggered, that ill will is going to arise. So you're going to need to have awareness of this ill will and all these other mental objects. So when we were children, when we were babies, we didn't have ill will, right? We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies. That ill will was formed over time, right? Because that chocolate and ice cream that David got for 2 or 3, 4 or 5 times, he was so happy about that and got all those pleasant feelings. At some point, mom and dad didn't give him the chocolate and ice cream. And then he got angry, and then he got frustrated. There was bodily sensations, there was a feeling, it affected the condition of the mind, and then it formed a conditioned object called ill will in this case. And then it became more and more deeply rooted. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is essentially put a blockade at the bodily sensations, cutting off and letting go at the bodily sensations. All the while, you're purifying your mind of these mental objects. It's like taking a jackhammer and breaking it up and getting rid of it. So all those 10 fetters that we talked about yesterday, those are all mental objects. That's what you're purifying your mind of, because all those mental objects are motivating unskillful conduct and all these discontent feelings. So you need to put a blockade at the bodily sensations, cutting off and letting go. But because your mind's not fully trained, you're not going to be able to do that very easily. So let me show you how this works in practice. Okay, let's just say I'm sitting here watching TV and the news comes on and you watch the news and you're noticing the frustration coming up. It's a bodily sensation first. It's going to be a bodily sensation. Well, if you know this and you know right after the bodily sensations, the mind's going to get angry or frustrated, no need to let the mind dwell in that. Turn off the news. Go for a walk, go for a bike ride, go to the bathroom, wash your hands, go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. Don't allow the mind to dwell in that and form the conditioned feeling, right? So that's the way it looks, that you redirect the mind, right? So no need to just sit there and keep watching the news and keep taking that in. Cut it off and let it go by redirecting the mind. Right? So that's the way it looks in practice. And you're going to need to do this in various situations where you're noticing the bodily sensations coming up. You're going to need to cut off and let go, applying right effort, moving the mind in a different direction. Okay? So this is right mindfulness. And this is what's going to help you to be able to practice right effort. First, develop awareness of mind, but then more specifically, start developing awareness of those bodily sensations, the tingling sensations with the anger and hostility. It's going to be tingling, tightening of the chest, tightening of the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. But even those pleasant feelings, they have bodily sensations too. You ever notice like tingling across your shoulders, up the back of your neck, over your head? Some people call these warm fuzzies. And it's actually desirable to get these things, right? But that's actually the indication that you're about to get a conditioned pleasant feeling. Even the neither painful nor pleasant feelings, the shyness. You ever hear about butterflies in the stomach, right? That queasiness in the stomach, that's the bodily sensation associated with shyness that is about to occur. The mind hasn't become shy yet. It's just a bodily sensation. And that's where you'd like to cut it off and let it go. Okay, so your mindfulness is going to help you to be able to then apply right effort. And then the thing that's going to help you to develop right mindfulness is right concentration. These are the words of the Buddha on right concentration. What he's teaching you here is something called the jhanas. The jhanas are 4 preliminary phases that your mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. So here, he's not explaining to you how to practice right concentration. He's explaining to you the results, that if you practice the Eightfold Path in its entirety, you're going to start experiencing these qualities of mind. And you're going to need to learn these at some point in the future, but this isn't the class that I usually teach these in. What I usually teach you at this point is how to practice right concentration, because that's what you need to know. So in other parts of the teachings of the Buddha, he teaches you how to practice right concentration. And I'll teach you these jhanas another time. These are enhanced qualities of mind that you're going to experience as you're putting together the Eightfold Path. It's kind of like the light bulb flickering, and you're getting glimpses more and more of what these qualities are that you're experiencing as you're making your way to enlightenment. But the way that you practice right concentration is through developing a daily meditation practice and practicing singleness of mind in day-to-day life. Your meditation practice is going to need to consist primarily of 2 different meditations: breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. These are the 2 primary forms of training in terms of meditation. And you're going to understand why tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be teaching you about the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots. And this is going to help you to understand why these 2 meditations are important. So what you're doing is you're building up your practice to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. Now that can sound like a lot to some people, depending on what you got going on in your life. But this takes 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to. You're not just snapping your fingers and instantly doing this. You're gradually building this up. And there's probably certain unbeneficial things that you're doing in your life right now that if you cleared those things out of your life, that you'd actually have a lot of time to do meditation. So if you're searching social media 3, 4, 5 hours a day, if you're watching YouTube videos endlessly, right, this is eating into your time that you could actually be meditating and getting more benefit. So you could just gradually move towards more and more meditation. What you're going to notice is frequency is more important than duration. That if it's a matter of one meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, go for the 2 for 15. That's what's actually going to be more beneficial. And then just gradually expand those 15 minutes to longer and longer and longer. So we're going to talk this afternoon more about meditation. These 2 meditations are helping you with very specific things. And you're going to need to develop this regular meditation practice because that's what's going to develop your mindfulness so you can be aware of these unwholesome qualities and the wholesome qualities. Then you're going to need to develop singleness of mind. This is where you're just doing one thing at a time. Oftentimes people are taught to multitask. This is part of the unknowing of true reality. Your mind actually cannot multitask. It's physically impossible for your mind to do more than one thing at a time. What you're actually doing is you're doing one thing for like 3 to 5 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else for like 5 to 8 seconds, and then you're rapidly cycling to something else for 3 to 5 seconds. Your mind is like running around and around and around and around. So if I'm talking on the phone with mom and I'm watching TV and I'm eating a sandwich, I'm not actually doing all 3 of those things at the same time. I'm talking to mom for a few seconds, watching TV for a few seconds, eating the sandwich for a few seconds. And now the mind's running around and around and around and around. And now you think that you're actually being more productive and you're actually being more successful, but you're actually not. Because this conversation that could have been like 10, 15, 20 minutes, it ends up being 45 minutes or an hour. That TV program, you didn't really digest what it was that you were watching. And the sandwich, you didn't really get to enjoy it. And now maybe you have a stomach ache and you need to lay in bed for an hour while you deal with the stomach ache. And then you probably said some things that were unwise to mom and you need to call her up and you're like, Mom, I'm so sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean to say that. And by the way, didn't you want me to do something? There was something you told me that you wanted me to do, but I forget. What was that again? So you're actually not concentrated on this phone call, right? And now you have to spend more time sorting out all the mess, right? And then if you've been doing this with your mind, like say you go to work for 8 or 10 hours and you're running around, trying to multitask, when you get home, you'll find it very challenging to rest and relax. You'll find that you're very stressed and having anxiety. It's kind of like a horse. If you ever gone to a racetrack and there's horses running around the racetrack, when they go to the barn, they're not calm. They're hyped up, right? Because they've been running around the track and they're all hyped up and they can't calm down. Your mind's exactly the same way. If you do that 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day where you're running around, when you go home, you'll find it very challenging to relax, right? So you would like to just do one thing at a time. So the way that this looks in practice is, let's just say you're washing the dishes at home and you see your mind's wandering. Cut that off, right? Your mindfulness is going to help you to see your mind's wandering. Your right effort is going to cut that off and let it go. And now you can focus on washing dishes. Because if you aren't paying attention to washing dishes, you can easily cut yourself, right? Or say you're in a business meeting and now you're in this business meeting and you're thinking about that trip to Thailand that you're going to take in about 6 months from now. Your mind's just longing and yearning and thinking about that trip to Thailand. Well, you're not focused in the business meeting. You're not doing what it is you need to do to be successful in the business meeting. So now you're not really advancing professionally because you're not paying attention to what it is that you need to do professionally. So when you see your mind thinking about that trip to Thailand in 6 months, cut that off and let it go. Come back to the business meeting, right? So this is what you would like to do to practice singleness of mind in day-to-day life. The way I think about this is that if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you were grinding this back and forth, initially at the very beginning, the steel rod's going to bounce around a lot because there's not a groove there yet. So your mind's going to be bouncing around a lot when you first start on this path. But if you grind this steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to start getting a groove in this wood. And now when it pops out, you're going to notice that it's popped out and you're going to be able to bring it back to the groove. But if you get this steel rod going back and forth long enough, you're going to get a deeper and deeper groove and eventually it's never going to pop out. You can just be focused and concentrated all the time because your mind is so used to being focused and concentrated. So that's how you develop this focus and concentration, is with a well-developed meditation practice and practicing singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. And whenever you see your mind bouncing around, you bring it back. So like right now, if you're thinking about lunch and what you're going to eat for lunch, you're like, no. come back to the temple, right? David's talking, let's figure out what it is that we need to do with the teachings of the Buddha. We'll get to lunch in a moment, right? So no worries. That's what you would like to do, is cut that off, bring your mind back to what it is that we're talking about, right? So this is the practice of concentration. So now, just a little bit of a summary on the mental discipline is there's right effort, where you're taking initiative to eliminate unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. Right mindfulness is awareness of the mind, understanding the 4 foundations of mindfulness and practicing those more closely. Being aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. Then there comes right concentration, where you're practicing meditation daily, developing the breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation, and then practicing singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. Whenever you see your mind wandering, cut that off and let it go, and bring your mind back to whatever it is that you're focused on. Okay, so any questions on any aspect of the Eightfold Path? I just walked you guys through each individual one of these factors. Anything you guys would like to ask? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, feel free to get a mic.
Is it on?
I'm not sure if it's on or not. We have new batteries in that box over there that you guys can
better?
change. Yep.
Okay. This should be super easy question. Under right livelihood, I made a list, and one of the ones mentioned was not a livelihood in the meat, in the meat business. What about us consuming meat? Is that caught up in there? Or how does that work?
We're going to talk about that tomorrow as part of the 5 precepts. That's not part of your livelihood. If you choose to consume it, that would be part of your actions.
Okay.
That would be doing that. But we're going to talk about it as part of the 5 precepts.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And if you're not going to be here tomorrow, we can talk about it privately too. And it's also in the book as well. Yes, ma'am.
And about compassion, what is the point of cultivating compassion? Like, should we do something about it every time we feel it?
So compassion isn't a feeling. It's a mental state that you're cultivating, and then you're maintaining that all throughout your days. That by the time you get to enlightenment, there's always compassion in your mind, where you have concern for the misfortune of others. It's a mental state. Whether you choose to do any actions behind it is a whole separate question. But you would like to maintain your mental state of compassion, where on either side of this, one side you're going to get indifference, where you could care less about others. On the other side of compassion is you're worried about the world. You having anxiety about the world. Every little thing that you see, you're so worried about. Oh my goodness, those kids don't have food. What are we going to do? This world is such a horrible place. Oh my gosh, right? Oh my God, there's a war. Oh, it's so horrible, right? This is on one side of the compassion, and the other side is the indifference. The middle way that the Buddha taught is to have this concern about the misfortune of others. And then whether you act upon it is a whole separate thing, because in every situation, you're not going to necessarily be able to act upon your compassion. But by having compassion in your mind, then that'll be where the mind's uplifted, and it'll be taken away from this worry and anxiety and this indifference, because either one of those, you're not going to feel peaceful and joyful. Okay. So let me just check online and see if we have any questions anywhere here. I don't see any questions anywhere. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break here for lunch. And when we come back this afternoon, I'm going to teach you guys breathing mindfulness meditation. We're going to go through the ins and outs of breathing mindfulness meditation. So right now is 12:20. What I'm going to do is give you guys a lunch until 1:45. That's almost an hour and a half. So thank you guys for your interest to learn. Thank you for your questions. And I'll see you guys at 1:45, okay? Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you afterwards. Okay.